Chapter 41. It was a good thing Seren was in the middle of nowhere, because the number of owls flocking to Harry was starting to get ridiculous. Now that his friends knew it was safe to write to him, they were more than happy to do so. "Blimey, Harry," Sirius remarked one afternoon, watching two more owls swoop in through the window. "Even I wasn't this popular in school." "You weren't planning a government coup," Harry replied dryly, scratching Susan's owl behind the ears. The second owl surprised him. He hadn't heard from Cassius yet this summer. "True, but even so, can't you pass a lot of this over to Susan and just get updates from her?" Sirius suggested. The plan to sort out the Wizengamot was definitely more Susan's project than Harry's. He was busy dealing with the whole war on two fronts. "Nah, I like being in the loop. Besides," he added, offering both owls a bit of croissant from his plate, "half of these letters aren't even about that. We just wanted to keep in touch." It felt nice to have so many people who genuinely cared about what he was up to. He hadn't heard from Ron and Hermione after convincing everyone in the Order that the Dursleys wouldn't let him receive owls. From what the twins and Ginny were saying, it seemed the two of them weren't overly upset about it. The three younger Weasleys he actually liked sent him letters regularly through Remus. He opened Cassius's letter first, his eyebrows furrowing at the brief note. "Dear Harry, just checking in to let you know I'm all right. Hope your summer is better than mine has been. My family is pretty enthusiastic about the current political situation, if you get what I mean. They want me involved as soon as possible. I've managed to hold things off for now, but I can't wait to get back to school. I'm at a friend's right now and will be for the next couple of weeks, so you can write me back now. But once I'm at home, it's probably best you don't. I'm pretty sure my uncle's reading my mail. Luckily, Draco and Pansy are decent people to write to, so they've been keeping me updated with that fancy ink Draco has. I'm slightly relieved that my guardianship situation means I'm not caught up in Susan's law hunting project. Before you worry your little Gryffindor head about me, I'm unharmed and should stay that way until school starts. We Slytherins are good at surviving tough situations. Enjoy your summer, Cassius." Harry's heart ached for the Slytherin. Cassius was about to start his final year at Hogwarts, and after that he'd have no more excuses to avoid his uncle. He wondered which friend Cassius was staying with, perhaps the secret someone he'd mentioned over Christmas. He hoped so. Cassius needed someone in his corner right now. Susan's letter didn't surprise him. Her reaction to the news that Dumbledore had been forced to step down as Chief Warrock of the Wizengamot was a mix of poorly concealed gloating and fear, especially with Minister Fudge taking over in the interim. The only thing more dangerous than a political figure with a hidden agenda was one who barely had two brain cells to rub together. "I've got another one for you," Remus announced as he walked into the living room, tossing a letter Harry's way. Harry snatched it out of the air, smiling at the sight of George's handwriting. "Busy mail day?" he asked. "The kid's getting more post than Gilderoy bloody Lockhart," Sirius grumbled as he got to his feet. "If you're here, I'd better skedaddle. Someone will notice I'm missing soon." He ruffled Harry's hair as he passed. "Stay out of trouble, Little Red." "We're not calling me that," Harry insisted for the 100th time. Sirius had declared that as an official marauder, or soon to be one once he got his animagus form, Harry deserved a proper marauder nickname. He was testing a few out, and each was worse than the last. Remus had said that James was responsible for all of their nicknames the first time around, and there was a reason for that. Remus settled into Sirius's spot on the sofa, while Harry began jotting down replies to Susan and Cassius, sending their owls off one by one. He considered opening the letter from the twins, but glanced at his watch instead. He was supposed to be in the dueling room by now. "That'll have to wait," he murmured, tucking the letter inside his book and leaving it on the armchair. "See you, Moony. Have fun, don't die," Remus called back, already engrossed in a book. Harry snorted. Snape hadn't nearly killed him in at least a week. Sure, he still needed the occasional healing charm or potion by the end of his lesson, but he was getting a lot better. To his surprise, Snape was waiting for him in the entrance hall. "Follow me." Instead of heading to the dueling room, Snape led him through the kitchen and out onto the back patio, crossing the expanse of grass. "Most of your battles will not take place in dueling rooms or on level ground," Snape explained, striding past the swimming pool. "They will happen in corridors, side streets, or on grass. There will be trees, potholes, houses, and puddles, things you might trip over or need to work around, things you could potentially use to your advantage." Harry's eyes widened slightly as they reached the tree line and continued on. He had never ventured into the woods here before. He had never needed to. Snape seemed to know exactly where they were going, eventually stopping in a small clearing. "We'll duel here today," he declared. "Use whatever you can to achieve your goals. Learn to think outside the box. You're good at dueling, yes, but you're also skilled in transfiguration and charms. Winning isn't about playing fair. It's about surviving," Harry finished, familiar with the phrase by now. He flicked his wand into his hand, scanning the clearing for anything that might be useful. A fallen branch caught his eye, about 10 feet behind Snape. Harry spotted a little muddy spot off to the left that could trip Snape up if he nudged him in that direction. There were trees nearby that would provide good coverage. This was much more Harry's style. They bowed, and the duel began. Later, it was one of those rare evenings when Harry was left alone with Snape in the house. Remus had been guilted into staying at headquarters for dinner, leaving the table at Seren unusually quiet. Harry didn't mind too much, until Snape nearly dropped his fork. His hand went to his forearm, and Harry's heart sank. "He's calling you now?" Snape nodded. "It's stronger than usual. This must be urgent." The Slytherin rose from the table, abandoning his half-eaten dinner. "I'll be back when I can. Hopefully Remus will be home soon. If you need him sooner, send Kerry. And don't practice any magic you can't reverse." It was a new warning, especially after Harry had accidentally stuck himself to the ceiling while practicing some spells he'd learned from Remus. He had waited there for an hour, until Snape and Remus returned from their order meeting. "Be safe," Harry replied. Snape nodded sharply and swept out of the room to retrieve his mask and robe. Harry didn't watch him go. The sight of Snape dressed in Death Eater regalia made his stomach turn. He finished his dinner morosely, though he perked up a bit when Kerry offered him brownies and ice cream for dessert. It was a miracle they weren't all Dudley-sized. Once he finished, he headed up to his room. The living room always felt too quiet when he was alone. Unfortunately, no non-reversible magic meant he couldn't practice his animagus transformations. He was starting to get partial transformations now, just a little at a time. But Remus was worried he might transform in some horrible way when no one was home to help him, so he'd made Harry promise not to try if he was alone. That left him with only a few options, but Harry was glad to take one of the opportunities. It had been a while since he had practiced his wandless magic. Sitting cross-legged in the center of his bed, he let the tension drain from his shoulders. The more he worked on his animagus transformation, the easier it became. Sirius had mentioned that it was because Harry was getting accustomed to accessing his core without a focus. After all, The transformation was essentially a form of advanced, wandless magic. Harry felt like he was finally tapping into the full potential of his core. He began to recall everything he could from his second-year charms class, having already mastered all his first-year spells. The freezing charm and the engorgement charm came easily, but the shrinking charm was proving a bit more challenging. He shot an annoyed glance at the rubber chicken, a makeshift wand, currently the size of a small dog, lying on his bed. With a gentle nudge of his magic, he concentrated, and the chicken began to shrink. Just then, he heard the front door open and quickly jumped off the bed, hurrying to the hall to find Remus standing there. He felt a wave of disappointment wash over him. "Harry, is everything all right?" Remus asked, clearly surprised by such an enthusiastic greeting. "Where's Severus?" Harry replied. "He got called away," Harry explained. "I was hoping you were him." Remus's smile faltered, and he muttered a curse under his breath. "How long has he been gone?" Harry glanced at his watch. "About an hour and a half." Remus relaxed slightly. "Good. We're not allowed to worry until it's been at least 4 hours. That's the rule," he insisted. Harry wondered how many times Remus had panicked before they established that rule, and how often he still worried, regardless. "How was the Order meeting? And dinner? How is everyone?" Remus hung his cloak on the hook and walked with Harry toward the living room, where Kerry had hot chocolate waiting for them. The meeting was fine. Arthur and Kingsley are a bit concerned about the movements of some known Voldemort supporters within the Ministry, but nothing overt has happened yet. Dinner was the same as always. "Loud and chaotic?" Harry asked knowingly, earning a brief grin from Remus. "Quite that, yes. Tonks sent a whole block of knives flying. It was just Kingsley's quick reflexes that saved the day. Bill nearly lost an eye in the process," Remus added, making Harry snort. He felt a surge of curiosity about the other members of the Order, the ones he didn't know yet. As much as he loved being at Seren and never wanted to leave, part of him wished Dumbledore would decide to move him to headquarters, just so he could meet all these people, and see the Weasleys again, of course. As they sipped their hot chocolate, Remus shared stories about some new products the twins were working on, and how furious Mrs. Weasley was about it all. Harry listened, grateful for the distraction from the anxious silence as they waited for Snape to return. Suddenly, a familiar ache throbbed in Harry's scar, the kind that signaled Voldemort's happiness. Just then, the front door opened, and Remus spilled a little of his hot chocolate. They both jumped up and hurried to the stairs. Snape appeared unharmed, and Harry let out a quiet sigh of relief, watching Remus rush to him, hands gliding over his shoulders, nostrils flaring as he tried to detect any hidden injuries with his werewolf senses. "I'm fine," Snape insisted softly, his tone gentle in a way it only ever was with Remus, and only sometimes, when he thought they were alone, or when Remus seemed particularly vulnerable. "He's happy," Harry remarked, grimacing against the pain in his forehead. "What happened?" "He's discovered that the full prophecy about you was recorded and stored in the Department of Mysteries," Snape replied, his eyes dull. "He's going to start going after it." "The Department of Mysteries? Isn't that, like, impossible to get into?" "Not to get in, but to navigate, yes. Unless you're an unspeakable, you'll be hard-pressed to find your way around," Snape confirmed. Harry felt a mix of apprehension and relief at the man's presence. His hands weren't trembling around the discarded mask, which meant he hadn't been tortured tonight. "I'll go see Dumbledore in the morning, but this doesn't bode well." Snape's eyes were fixed on Harry as he spoke, prompting Harry to raise an eyebrow. "Only those who are the subject of a prophecy can touch a recorded version of it," Snape continued. The realization about the prophecy Voldemort wanted hit Harry hard. "Shit," he muttered. Snape nodded. "Well, at least I have a warning now. Stay away from the Ministry." If Harry didn't go there to retrieve it, then Voldemort himself would have to enter the Ministry, which seemed unlikely. Harry noticed Snape leaning more heavily against Remus and cleared his throat. "I'm going to bed. I'll see you both in the morning." He knew they had a routine for nights like this, much like the ones they followed before and after the full moon. Harry didn't want to intrude on their private moments. He hurried back upstairs, briefly ducking into the living room to grab his abandoned hot chocolate before heading to his room. So, Voldemort finally had a plan. Harry wondered if Dumbledore would share the prophecy, now that they knew Voldemort was after it, or if he would tell Harry anything at all about Voldemort's intentions. As far as they were concerned, Harry was stuck on Privet Drive, completely cut off from information and contact with the wizarding world. Knowledge was power, and Harry had more knowledge than Dumbledore could ever guess. Harry's 15th birthday crept up on him. It was the first time he nearly forgot to stay up until midnight. He had been so busy training and had even managed to turn his hair red while working on his animagus transformation that he lost track of the day. It wasn't until he was getting ready for bed that he noticed the date on his alarm clock and remembered. Nevertheless, he woke up early, surrounded by owls, all jostling for space as they delivered their messages. Harry eagerly unwrapped the gifts that had been offered to him, laughter bubbling up as he revealed each surprise. There were sweets, books, and a brand new password-protected journal. He even found a Tutsil Tornado's pennant from Cho, who was always trying to sway him away from the Harpies. To his delight, Fleur and Victor had sent him presents too. This was by far the most he'd ever received on his birthday, and he wasn't finished yet. Filled with excitement, he bounded down the stairs and beamed when he spotted Sirius at the breakfast table. "I figured if there's ever a time I can get away with sulking in my room all day, it's your birthday," the animagus teased, opening his arms for a hug. "Happy birthday, kiddo." Before Harry could respond, Remus wrapped his arms around both of them, planting a kiss on Harry's hair. "Happy birthday," he said, releasing Harry and nudging him toward a plate piled high with pancakes, topped with cream and fruit. "What do you want to do today, Harry?" Harry bit his lip, secretly hoping for a surprise like last year. "What are my options?" "Same as usual," Remus replied with a shrug. "Flying, swimming, playing with Buckbeak. Maybe a trip to the cinema, if we're careful." Harry tried to hide his disappointment. "Or you could stay here and wait for your visitors to arrive," Snape drawled from behind his copy of the Prophet, his eyes glinting with mischief. At that, Harry's face lit up, practically bouncing in his seat. He knew there were only two people who would visit him at Seren. Sirius chuckled. "I think that decides it," he teased, causing Harry to blush. It's fine. You'd rather spend your birthday with your boyfriend. We get it." Suddenly, Harry wondered if it was wise to have Draco over with Sirius and Remus around. The teasing was already intense enough when it was just him talking about the Slytherin. Trying to ignore the heat rising in his cheeks, he quickly dug into his pancakes, focusing on the delicious food in front of him. His breakfast. "They should be here in about half an hour," Sirius announced, waving his wand to summon a stack of wrapped presents as soon as Kerry cleared the table. "Just enough time to give you these." Opening presents in front of the three men felt a bit less awkward than last year. He was getting used to their generosity. He unwrapped defense books, some prank items, and a stunning set of dueling robes that must have cost a fortune. "This is brilliant. "Thank you, guys," Harry exclaimed, his smile widening as Sirius ruffled his hair. "Only the best for our pup turning 15. Love you, kiddo. Let Kerry put those away. Let's go wait outside for your boyfriend." Sirius laughed, dodging the elbow Harry aimed at his ribs. Nevertheless, Harry followed him outside to the front drive, wandlessly summoning a bright red rubber bone from a few feet away. He had bought it as a joke for Sirius's last birthday, but the man had surprisingly become attached to it. Harry tossed the bone across the grass, watching as his godfather transformed mid-stride and bounded after it. Padfoot's sleek, inky fur gleamed in the summer sunlight. Even in dog form, the changes in Sirius over the past year were striking. He hardly resembled the man who had endured Azkaban. If it weren't for the shadows in his eyes and the tension in his shoulders, you'd never guess. Indeed, all four of them looked much healthier than they had this time last year. Harry had even caught Snape grumbling about needing new trousers thanks to Kerry's cooking, while Remus teased him about no longer being two-dimensional. As for the werewolf himself, his peace with his inner wolf and the training he was providing Harry had made him broader in the shoulders, hiding impressive muscles beneath his cardigans and mild-mannered smile. Harry was just relieved that Snape had stopped leaving nutrient potions in conspicuously innocent places for him to find. He knew he would never be able to thank them enough for how far they had all come. Harry noticed how much he had changed over the past year. He was no longer as tall or stocky as his father, thanks to the potions master's expertise, which had corrected far more than he ever thought possible. Now he actually looked his age. Lost in his thoughts about their progress, he nearly missed the crack of apparitions signaling the arrival of their guests. Both he and Padfoot turned their heads toward the sound. The dog dropped his toy and transformed back into a man, but not quite quickly enough to hide his playful antics from his smirking cousin. "I always wanted a dog when we were children," Narcissa teased, leaning in to kiss Sirius's cheek. "Seren is treating you well, cousin. I'm glad to see it." "You're always welcome to come share the benefits," Sirius replied, his grey eyes scanning her with concern. "Pardon my saying so, but you looked like you could use it." Indeed, Narcissa Malfoy looked perfectly presented, as always, but she hadn't bothered to conceal the dark circles under her eyes, and she seemed a little thinner in the cheeks. Harry felt a spark of pride as he noticed the dragon necklace he had given her resting at her throat. "My lord husband is putting my hosting skills to the test this summer," she said primly. "I can't say I approve of his choice of house guests." Beside her, Draco flinched slightly. Harry reached for him without hesitation, pulling him into a quick, chaste kiss despite their audience. "I'm glad you're okay," he murmured, hugging the blonde tightly. He felt Draco's shoulders slump, the taller boy relaxing against him for just a moment. "You too. Happy birthday," Draco replied softly. Narcissa squeezed Harry's shoulder, smiling fondly at the pair. "Many happy returns, Harry, darling. I'm glad we were able to get away for the day, though I think Draco might have run away and come here by himself regardless." Her son blushed at her words, and Harry, Sirius, grinned. "Why don't you boys go hit the Quidditch pitch for a little while?" His gaze kept drifting back to Narcissa, and Harry could see the worry etched on his face. He figured Sirius probably wanted to talk to her privately. "Yeah, okay." Slipping his hand into Draco's, Harry turned toward the pitch as the pair of blacks strolled back to the front door. Draco's shoulder brushed against his. "It's good to see you," Draco said softly. "You look good." Harry would have blushed if he hadn't been reminded of the last time Draco had seen him, on the train home from Hogwarts, still raw from Cedric's death and terrified that Sirius wouldn't be able to find a way to get him safely away from the Dursleys. "I've been able to get some rest," he replied eventually. Draco snorted. I could do with a bit of that. He looked like he hadn't been sleeping well at all. Harry squeezed his hand. We don't have to fly. We can just sit if you want. No. Draco untangled their fingers, drawing his wand and his shrunken broom from his pocket, resizing it in one fluid motion. I've hardly been able to fly all summer. It's not always safe to be outside the house. His lips twisted in a sneer. Not always safe to be inside either. Harry's heart clenched painfully. Here he was, enjoying his freedom while poor Draco was dealing with a nightmare made real. Come here for a second. He nudged the broom from Draco's hand and wrapped his arms around the blonde's lithe hips. Automatically, Draco's arms came around Harry's shoulders, holding him close. He was tense at first, but as Harry tucked his chin into the hollow of Draco's neck, the Slytherin finally relaxed, slumping into Harry with the quietest of sighs. "It's good to see you," Draco repeated, barely louder than a whisper. "I've missed you." "Me too," Harry breathed, closing his eyes to feel Draco's heartbeat against his cheek. Merlin, he'd needed this. He wished Draco could stay all summer. Even when Harry had to leave Seren to play Gryffindor's golden boy, at least his boyfriend would be safe from the monster in his home. But that would raise too many questions, draw too many lines they weren't ready to confront yet. The two boys stood there for a while, simply taking each other in, until Draco finally took a deep breath and dropped his arms. Harry leaned in and kissed him, and when he pulled back, they were both smiling. "Let's chase the snitch for a bit, shall we?" Draco suggested. "We can talk after lunch." They had so much to discuss, but Draco didn't seem ready for that, and honestly, neither was Harry. He'd much rather just fly with his boyfriend on his birthday and pretend they were normal, if only for a little while. Lunch was perfectly timed. Just as the bell rang, the clouds that had been gathering all morning finally let loose their rain. Harry and Draco were both a bit drenched by the time they made it inside. Snape quickly worked his magic with a couple of drying charms, squeezing Draco's shoulder as he did. "It's good to see you well, Draco," he murmured, his tone warm in that way only Remus and Draco could elicit. Draco looked a little brighter at the sight of his godfather, and a curl of guilt rose within Harry. Here he was, monopolizing Draco's time with him too. He felt like the worst boyfriend. Kerry had prepared a feast fit for royalty, complete with another masterpiece of a cake. This one was covered in small fondant foxes, prompting an explanation for the two Malfoys. "Corrupting him further, are you?" Narcissa remarked to Sirius, who grinned unapologetically. "That's so cool," Draco said, envy shining in his eyes. "Uncle Severus, can I planned to brew the potion for you once you had returned to school," Snape interjected smoothly. The unspoken, "when it's safer," hung in the air. But Draco didn't mind the delay. He beamed, ignoring his mother's eye roll. "If I had known you'd start taking godparenting advice from this cretin, I might have protested more about your choice in companions," Narcissa grumbled. Harry understood it was all for show. If she truly disapproved of Draco learning from Snape, he wouldn't have mentioned it. Any advantage Draco could gain was worth it. "And here I thought I was your favorite family member," Sirius said, mock gasping. "Andromeda remains my favorite, as you well know," Narcissa replied, "regardless of whether or not we're on speaking terms." A hint of sadness flickered in her grey eyes. Sirius cleared his throat. "About that. Recent events have put me back in touch with her daughter. She's an aura, you know." Harry could tell Narcissa was well aware of her niece's career path. Obviously, we've had to be careful how we communicate with certain manipulative old windbags around, Remus chimed in with a snort. She helped me reconnect with Andy. I needed to explain my innocence and all that, Sirius continued. Harry noticed Narcissa's grip on her cutlery tighten almost imperceptibly. Sirius, I'm not saying you have to, he interrupted. I just want you to know I'm working on finding out how close to Dumbledore that side of the family is. I could never tell how much influence he had over her running off with Ted. Not that I begrudge her that, he's a top bloke. But if you want me to pass on a message once I'm sure she can be trusted, I'd be happy to. I'll think about it, Narcissa replied eventually, her lips pursed. Let's not do anything reckless, though. There's far too much at stake. Andy would rip the world in half for her littlest sister, and you know it, Sirius argued gently, softening the mood. Narcissa smiled faintly. You need an escape plan that can't be traced back to me, Sissa, just in case the boys go public. I'd be the first person your husband would suspect. We're being careful, Harry chimed in, a hint of indignation in his voice. I know, pup, but things happen. You always need a backup plan. I appreciate your concern, but I have it handled, Narcissa asserted. I'm worth far more at my husband's side than I would be cowering behind my sister's skirts. Her smirk was icy, every bit the Slytherin. Besides, I've always been a better duelist than Lucius. Sirius let out a short laugh. And he knows it, he added proudly. I understand you want to help, but I think it's worth getting back in touch. Andromeda would be pleased to hear you're not as lost as she feared, Snape said, his quiet voice cutting through the tension between the cousins. Narcissa's expression wavered. I suppose, she finally replied. Suddenly, she cleared her throat and smiled again. How rude of us to carry on this dreadful conversation over Harry's birthday meal. I do apologize, though I feel you've hardly noticed with those moon-eyed looks you're giving my son. This smirk was just as Slytherin as the last, but much warmer, a playful glint in her eyes. Harry ducked his head, feeling the heat rise in his cheeks. Mother, Draco complained, his pale cheeks turning crimson. Leave him alone. And miss my one chance of the year to watch my darling boy and his beau be so smitten? She teased, smoothing her son's hair with a saccharine smile. I believe it's my right as a mother, especially after watching the pair of you be utterly oblivious last year. Harry wondered if it was possible to explode from too much blood rushing to his face. He glanced at his godfathers for help, but he knew they would be no use. Sirius's grin spelled danger. Does my bitter old heart good to see young love? Sirius sighed dramatically. Harry's been positively heartbroken, unable to write to his boyfriend all summer. It's torture watching him sigh at the window, yearning for his paramour. Sirius, Harry yelped, his eyes wide with shock. He couldn't bring himself to look at Draco, or anyone for that matter. None of that is true. Sure, he'd hated not being able to write to Draco, and maybe he'd spent more time than he should have worrying about how Draco was faring with Voldemort in his house. But there had been no sighing at windows. I do hope Draco has been a little more discreet in his pining, considering your company, Snape drawled, his dark eyes gleaming with amusement. Great. Now even Snape was joining in on the teasing. I haven't been pining, Draco protested, and I bet you were worse when you were my age. You're with a Gryffindor too, you know. But my Gryffindor knew where I lived during the summer, and understood that my parents hardly cared where I was. Snape shot back easily. Remus's smile widened, his expression turning starry-eyed as he reminisced about the good parts of his teenage years. Harry could hardly imagine it. Remus sneaking away to visit Snape in his Muggle town over the summer. He grimaced, not wanting to picture it. "We're just glad you're happy, pup," Sirius said, feigning innocence with wide eyes. "After all those nights you spent gushing about Draco to me before you got together, pretending you only liked him as a friend, wondering if he would ever like you back." He stopped abruptly, his nose transforming into a bright green teapot. "Oi, little blighter!" "Excellent wandless transfiguration, Harry, well done," Remus complimented. "Though if you think it's going to stop him from talking, you'll have to try a lot harder, I'm afraid." "Narcissa, did I ever tell you about the time Harry told me about his first kiss?" Sirius continued, his voice slightly nasal from the teapot on his face. "We're leaving," Harry declared, jumping to his feet. He glanced wide-eyed at Draco and grabbed the blonde's hand. "Oh, but you haven't finished your cake," Narcissa protested, barely stifling her laughter. Harry quickly snatched his plate, and Draco's half-eaten cake floated over to rest next to his. "We're going upstairs." With cake in one hand and his boyfriend in the other, Harry headed for the door, his blush feeling like it might never fade. "Keep the door open," Sirius called after them, cackling gleefully. Harry groaned and quickened his pace. Why had he thought it was a good idea to have Draco over with Sirius around? He couldn't bear to look at the Slytherin until they were far from the kitchen, almost at Harry's room. Then he blushed for a whole new reason, Sirius's parting words echoing in his mind. What would Draco think, him dragging him up to his bedroom? "I'm sorry," he stuttered, skidding to a halt. "We can go to the other sitting room or somewhere else. We can't eat cake in the library, but I—" He was cut off by a kiss, Draco smiling against his lips. They both pulled back, still blushing. "It's fine," Draco said, pushing open the door to Harry's room and taking the cake from Harry's hands. "You couldn't have picked up some forks on your way out?" Harry rolled his eyes and transfigured a couple of quills from his desk into forks. "I was a little busy trying to escape before Sirius said something that made me want to crawl into a hole and die." The two boys settled onto the bed, the plate of cake balanced between them. "I should have known he would pull something like that. He's been teasing me about you for ages." "Honestly," Harry grumbled, "you've been at it for ages." "You can't help it if you're blinded by my good looks," Draco replied with a carefree smile. "You're only human, after all." "Oh, don't you start," Harry muttered, trying to keep his embarrassment at bay. "You're just as bad as I am." He refused to feel ashamed about his feelings for Draco, but Sirius's teasing was on a whole other level. Draco grinned as he shuffled closer, careful not to knock over the empty cake plate. "I am," he admitted shamelessly. "I've missed you so much this summer. I am positively Gryffindor about it. You've ruined my reputation." Harry rolled his eyes but couldn't help grinning as Draco invaded his space. "Your reputation is just fine," he countered, sliding his hand into Draco's soft blonde hair at the nape of his neck. "But it's nice to know I'm not the only sappy Gryffindor here." Draco responded with a kiss, silencing any further words. Harry shifted to get more comfortable, pulling Draco half on top of him. He sighed into the kiss, his hand finding its way to Draco's waist, their legs tangling together. Suddenly, Draco froze and pulled back. Harry frowned, concerned. "What's wrong?" "Harry, about what your godfather said." Harry nearly groaned at the reminder of Sirius's embarrassing words, wondering which part was bothering Draco the most. But then he saw the hesitant, shy look in Draco's eyes, and understanding hit him like a wave. They were in his bedroom, on his bed, alone. His heart raced. Was Draco suggesting what he thought he was suggesting? They had never been alone like this before, not in a place where they didn't have to worry about being caught. Everything we've done has been great, truly. Oh, Draco was talking again. Harry realized he should probably pay attention. I just don't know if I mean things. Maybe we shouldn't. Draco, Harry interrupted, his brows furrowing in concern. Draco was growing increasingly frustrated with every word he stumbled over, his body tense and restless. Talk to me. Can we maybe just slow it down a bit? The Slytherin blurted out, then bit his lip. I mean, just because we're up here in your room doesn't mean we have to, do anything. He wouldn't meet Harry's gaze now. The Gryffindor frowned. Do you not want me to kiss you? He asked, a sudden wave of worry washing over him. He tried to pull away, but Draco held on tight. No, Draco exclaimed. No, this is good. Oh, bugger it all, he muttered under his breath. I know you've had that book from George, and it's got all sorts of stuff in it, but I don't think I'm ready to go any further than we have just yet. Even if now would be perfect, because we're here and alone. And even though Sirius was teasing, I bet he wouldn't even care if we shut the door. And my mother just wants me to be happy. But all the same, Merlin, I can't think when I'm looking at you like this. Harry might have been an idiot Gryffindor with blood rushing to places other than his brain, but even he could piece that together. He frowned, gently stroking the back of Draco's neck. Draco, breathe, he soothed. We don't have to do anything. I'm sorry if you thought, if I was pushing or something, I didn't mean to. I don't think I'm ready either. He had read the book cover to cover by now, and maybe in the privacy of his bed at night, he liked to imagine doing some of those things with Draco. But so far they hadn't done more than take their shirts off and rub against each other, and the thought of getting naked together was overwhelming, to say the least. Oh, Draco said softly, feeling deflated. You don't want to? At some point, yeah, Harry murmured, but not right now. I swear I wasn't thinking about that when I brought you up here. I just really wanted to be with you, without all the teasing and stuff. Gradually, Draco began to relax. His body was pressed against Harry's, but it wasn't meant to provoke anything. Harry shifted until he was lying on his back, with Draco curled comfortably under his arm. You know you're always allowed to say no, right? He said, tracing gentle patterns on Draco's arm. Draco made a quiet, non-committal noise, but didn't respond. Harry recalled a conversation he had with George after he admitted he and Draco were together. It had started out embarrassing, as those conversations often do, but George had talked to him about consent and boundaries. He emphasized that it was only worth doing things if everyone was equally interested and involved. George insisted Harry should never feel pressured into anything. He even joked that he'd prank Draco for a week if the Slytherin ever tried to pressure him. Harry thought about how Draco probably didn't have anyone like that to talk to. Maybe Snape, but he couldn't imagine that conversation going well. Slytherins had a different approach to relationships. It often felt like a power play. Maybe they didn't discuss consent at all. His heart ached as he held Draco tighter, kissing the top of his head. I promise, I'll never make you do anything you don't want to, he said earnestly. Even if we're in the middle of something and you change your mind, just tell me, and I'll stop, okay? We can do something different, or, hell, I'll go take a cold shower or something. He tried to elicit a laugh from Draco, but only managed to get a small smile and an eye roll in response. There's no rush to do anything, he continued. I don't care what the other boys say. Like it's some sort of competition or whatever, Draco said, shaking his head. He sighed. The Slytherins are probably even worse than the Gryffindor boys, bragging about how far they've been. He chuckled softly. They're all moving so quickly, I doubt they really know what they're doing anyway. Finally, Draco's stormy grey gaze met Harry's, and Harry smiled. I just like being with you, even if we just cuddle, though I really, really like kissing you, he admitted, feeling a bit bashful. Kissing is good, Draco agreed, his fingers curling in the hem of Harry's t-shirt. We've got plenty of time to get to everything else, Harry insisted, resolutely ignoring the little voice in the back of his mind telling him he'd die before graduation, that the war would catch up to him sooner than he'd like. That was no reason to rush things. He'd rather die a virgin than make Draco uncomfortable. Right? Abruptly, he wondered if Draco was thinking about the long term as Harry foolishly was. Sure, Draco made comments sometimes, but he'd never really said he expected anything like that. I can see you panicking, Draco said with amusement, leaning in to kiss Harry firmly. I wouldn't dive into something as reckless and idiotic as dating the bloody boy who lived if I wasn't in it for the long haul. You're stuck with me, Potter. A soft expression crossed Draco's face, one that made Harry's heart ache with unspoken words. Words he desperately hoped Draco felt too, but ones he wasn't brave enough to voice yet. Then we can go as slow as we want, Harry replied instead. It'll be worth the journey when we get there and know each other better. Every time things heated up between them, he discovered a new part of Draco that made him moan. A sensitive spot or a way to touch him just right. The longer they took with that, the better it would be when things progressed. Draco's eyes darkened as he tilted his head, a hint of mischief sparking in his gaze. Draco captured Harry's lips with a passion that silenced any further conversation. For the first time all summer, Harry felt like he could truly breathe. Talking to Remus and Sirius about Cedric, Voldemort, and his fears had been helpful, guiding him through his grief. But lying there with Draco, first sharing kisses and then whispering softly, wrapped in each other's warmth on his bed, Harry sensed the jagged edges of the emptiness in his chest beginning to mend. As their conversation slowly faded, Harry struggled to articulate his feelings about the graveyard incident, while Draco avoided bringing up the Dark Lord intruding on their peaceful day. Neither of them was truly okay, but they accepted that there was little they could do about it, at least not yet. Summer would soon end, bringing a new set of challenges. They could face those together when the time came. This was their last moment together for a while. "Do you think the defense teacher will be any good this year?" Draco asked, shifting to meet Harry's gaze without straining his neck. Harry scoffed. "With the current track record? Unlikely. Merlin knows how half our year will pass their owls." "Don't say that word," Draco protested. "It's all Father has talked about this summer. Exams this, owls that. I'd better do the Malfoy name proud with my results." He grimaced. "I can't wait until it's all over. Exams, school, this bloody war. Then maybe I'll finally get to live my own life." Harry pressed his lips together, rarely allowing himself to think about what came next. "Maybe I'll join you in professional Quidditch," Draco continued, a playful glint in his eye, "just to annoy Father. But we'd have to play on the same team. I've heard the schedules are a nightmare." A warmth settled in Harry's chest at the thought. Harry felt a warm rush as he lay against Draco's chest. There was a certainty in Draco's voice about their future together, a reassurance that they would stick together no matter what. "We can't both be seekers on the same team, though," Harry said, choosing to indulge in Draco's dream. They could pretend to be normal teenage wizards, with no war or prophecies looming over them, just the everyday trials of school. It was a comforting thought. "Don't be daft. I'd be a chaser," Draco shot back without missing a beat. "I know better than to think I can beat you to the snitch. You beat Victor Crumb for Salazar's sake. The only reason I'm seeker for Slytherin is that there were no openings for chaser in our second year. Plus, I was a little idiot who thought I could outpace you with a faster broom." "Then why didn't you switch in third year?" Harry asked, recalling that one of the Slytherin chasers had graduated at the end of their second year. Draco's expression turned sheepish. "Riling you up was fun," he admitted. "I didn't want to let anyone else have that pleasure." Harry smirked, feeling a warmth spread through him. "Possessive little git," he teased fondly, "staking your claim before you even realized you fancied me." "You've always been mine, Potter," Draco replied simply. The weight of those words tightened Harry's throat. How true that was. Pushing past the wave of unexpected emotion, Harry rolled on top of Draco, grinning smugly. "Maybe you'll get lucky in this year's match against me," he teased. "Maybe you'll get distracted looking at my arse," Draco countered, his hands moving to cup Harry's. "Draco, darling, I have a firebolt," Harry shot back. "You'll be the one staring at my arse and remembering exactly what happened after I beat Victor Crumb to the snitch." That brief moment behind the greenhouse remained one of Harry's fondest memories, the start of many late-night fantasies. "Then if you do win, you'll know it was because I was too busy imagining getting you out of your Quidditch robes," Draco said with a teasing smile. They weren't trying to provoke each other again, but Harry couldn't help but grin against Draco's jawbone. "Excuses, excuses," he whispered, planting a soft kiss beneath Draco's earlobe. "Maybe I won't go professional," Draco continued, his fingers tracing the ridges of Harry's spine. "Healer training is best done straight out of school, after all. I'll let you go chasing the snitch, and I'll be here to heal all the bruises when you get whacked by bludgers." Harry closed his eyes, envisioning the scene. Coming home after a long day of training, kissing Draco hello, and letting the blonde fuss over his minor injuries. Maybe they'd cook dinner together, or rather, Draco would watch Harry cook, because Merlin knew the spoiled pureblood had never stood at a stove in his life. But Harry would teach him. They'd figure it out. "That sounds really good," he confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "We'll get a house somewhere in London. You'll be working longer hours than I will, and I can apparate or flew to wherever I'm training. We'll ward it so your mum and our godfathers can't come over unless we invite them, or Sirius will be a nosy bugger. Maybe on the days I'm not training and you're not too busy, I can bring you lunch and we can eat it together outside the hospital." Harry hadn't been to St. Mungo's, but he imagined there had to be a park nearby, maybe a tree they could sit under, sharing sandwiches on warm summer days before Draco had to rush back to another endless shift of healer training. In his mind, the dream expanded. Draco would become a fully qualified healer, one of the best young practitioners St. Mungo's had seen in decades. Harry would play for England, leading them all the way to the World Cup final at least once. And when he was done with Quidditch, whether due to injury or boredom, maybe I could master defense against the dark arts, Draco mused. I could write textbooks or something that would let me stay home with our kids, however many we have. Who knows, maybe I'd even teach once they're old enough for Hogwarts. He hesitated, his thoughts shifting. But do I even want kids? I'm not brave enough to ask that question. Sounds like a solid plan to me, Draco murmured, a hint of warmth in his voice. We've got it all figured out. He sighed, his breath brushing against Harry's cheek. Just need to get rid of a certain Dark Lord first. And my father. If your dad tries to stop us, I'll hex him, Harry replied, not wanting to delve into the Dark Lord issue just yet. He noticed Draco frowning. That's not what I'm worried about, Draco dismissed. Harry raised an eyebrow, curious, and Draco's expression darkened. He raised me, Harry. I know I had my mother, but you remember what I was like before. I wanted to be just like him. He grimaced. Part of me thinks I always will be. You were 12, Draco. We're all idiots at that age. But that's 12 years of idolizing a monster. 12 years of him shaping me into the perfect little pure-blood heir, the perfect soldier for his master. You think I'm better, but I'm not, deep down. I'm exactly what he raised me to be. I'll always be a Malfoy. You're a black, and you know it, Harry countered firmly. Don't pretend your mum hasn't raised you too. You're a Slytherin, Draco, but that doesn't make you your father. Look at Snape. He's more of a father figure to you than Lucius Malfoy ever was in the ways that truly matter. He's not the picture of a light wizard, but he's a good man. He has the love of a good man and a family. He just had to do awful things to get there. And he'll be damned if he lets you follow in his footsteps, Harry pointed out, determined not to let Draco believe otherwise. For a moment, Draco wished he could believe he had anything but blood in common with Lucius Malfoy. Don't think like that, Draco. You're a good person, Harry said gently. Draco sighed, pushing Harry's fringe back off his forehead. I wish I could have your optimism, Scarhead. Harry grinned, leaning in to steal a kiss. I'm a Gryffindor. It's what we do, he joked. Just trust me. Do you really think I'd let you end up like your dad? He almost added, do you really think I'd love you if I thought you could be? But the words stuck in his throat. He didn't want that to be the first time he said it, especially during such a grim conversation. Still, he felt like Draco understood anyway. The blonde settled under Harry's body. Promise me you won't, he pleaded. Promise me you'll stop me from becoming like him. In the back of Harry's mind, a memory flashed to earlier in the summer, when he had sat distraught on the kitchen floor, looking up at Remus and Snape. Promise me you won't let me become like him. Easiest promise I'll ever keep, he rasped, echoing Remus's words, his heart thudding against his ribs. Maybe, together, all their promises would be kept. Chapter 42. It tore at Harry's heart to watch Draco and his mother leave. The only bright spot was that he had convinced Sirius to lend Draco his two-way mirror for the rest of the summer. Harry saw Sirius regularly and always had Remus or Kerry nearby to help if he needed them. He couldn't bear to send Draco back home, knowing who was there, without a way to communicate. With his birthday now a fond memory and a new determination burning in his chest, along with a vision of life with Draco after the war, Harry threw himself into his training. He was unsure how much longer he'd be confined at his relatives before Dumbledore would allow him to leave, and he felt a sense of urgency. Unfortunately, Harry had no idea how quickly that day would come. Just a few days after his birthday, he was training with Remus while Snape had been summoned by Dumbledore for the day. Dueling with Remus was always an interesting experience. He had a completely different style than Snape, but was just as knowledgeable. Now that Remus had stopped worrying about hurting Harry, he was quite the challenging opponent. Harry knew Remus was still holding back, but it was less than before. There was progress. Suddenly, the door slammed open. Both of them instinctively turned their wands toward the noise, lowering them when they saw Snape. He looked grave, his lips pressed into a thin line. "Potter, you need to go to your relatives immediately." Harry's heart sank. Do they know I'm missing? Had someone finally decided to investigate the fact that he never left his room? Not yet, but they will soon. The Ministry will be there any minute. Staring up at Snape's dark eyes, Harry felt his pulse begin to race. The Ministry? Has there been an attack on the house? There's no easy way to say this. Someone set a Dementor loose near your relative's home, no doubt hoping it would find you. Instead, It found your cousin. The words echoed in Harry's mind as if he were hearing them from a great distance. Underwater. Harry barely registered Remus swearing quietly as he placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. A Dementor in Little Whinging? Dudley, is he... Harry couldn't finish the thought. Snape's expression said it all. He's been kissed, hasn't he? Harry's stomach lurched. I'm afraid so. I wish there was time to explain, but you need to be back in your bedroom before anyone comes to find you. We won't leave you there long, cub, Remus assured him, wrapping an unresponsive Harry in a tight hug. I promise. Harry could only manage a few weak agreements before Kerry appeared, her eyes wide with concern, taking him by the hand. In an instant, the dueling room of Seren transformed into his old bedroom at Privet Drive. He'd returned a few times, sitting by the window so his watchers wouldn't think he was dead. The Dursleys had no idea about any of this. Faintly, he could hear the TV on downstairs, some singing competition show that Petunia liked. His heart pounded in his ears. Did they know yet? Were they even there? Moments later, Kerry reappeared with his school trunk and a few other items she scattered around the room to make it look like he'd been living there. Harry almost laughed. No one looking at this room could possibly imagine he was comfortable, no matter how much of his stuff was lying about. The door is being unlocked, Master Harry, she said quietly, wringing her hands. Call for Kerry if you need anything. With a short bow, she disappeared, leaving Harry alone. He stood in the middle of the room, feeling utterly lost. What had just happened? He didn't have time to think for long. The doorbell rang through the house, and he swallowed as his throat suddenly felt dry. Carefully, he crept toward the door, cracking open the cat flap at the bottom and crouching down to press his ear against the gap. Hello, officer. Is everything all right? Petunia answered the door, her voice dripping with the anticipation of juicy gossip. Harry felt a wave of nausea wash over him. Are you Petunia Dursley? A female voice asked, barely audible over the TV blaring from the living room. I'm sorry, is your husband home? What's this all about? Vernon? Vernon, it's the police! Petunia's shrill call echoed through the house. Harry heard the creak and grunt of Vernon pushing himself off the sofa, and the TV abruptly fell silent. What? Heavy footsteps approached as Vernon joined Petunia in the hallway. What do you want at this time of night? My apologies, Mr. Dursley. I'm afraid it's about your son. Is my Dudders in trouble? He's a good boy, officer. If he's done anything, it's those awful friends of his leading my poor boy astray, Petunia insisted, her voice rising. The officer must have shown some kind of concern, because Petunia let out a quiet whimper. I'm so sorry to tell you this, Mr. and Mrs. Dursley. Your son was found in the underpass off Wisteria Walk. He seems to have had some sort of brain bleed. He's unresponsive. Petunia gasped in horror. Harry froze, his fingers gripping the edge of the cat flap. If this was the Muggle police, did the Ministry even know? Snape seemed sure they did. Were they busy rounding up the Dementor, or was this police officer just an aura in disguise? Through his aunt's sobbing, Harry caught snippets of the rest of the conversation. Vernon was insisting they would head straight to the hospital, demanding to speak to a superior, asking who had found Dudley. Just as Harry was about to sit up, in case either of them came upstairs for something, he noticed a flash of feathers by the window. Wide-eyed, he scrambled across the room, opening the window quietly, just in time for a medium-sized brown owl to swoop in and drop a letter on the bed. It was just a... Harry stared at the scrap of parchment, reading the hurried scrawl. "Harry, don't go anywhere. We're trying to figure out what happened. Whatever you do, don't leave the house." He couldn't suppress a derisive snort. Did Mr. Weasley really think he hadn't been stuck at Privet Drive all summer? If he had been outside, maybe the Dementor would have found him instead of Dudley. His stomach churned at the thought. The owl took off as soon as it delivered the message, leaving no room for a response. Harry sank onto the bed, his knees shaking, and gripped the frayed duvet. Dudley had been kissed by a Dementor. He was, if not dead, then practically so. All because Harry had been safely hidden away at Seren, where no one could find him. Part of him felt a sense of relief. If he had been here, if it had been a normal summer like Dumbledore and the Order believed, he would have been right in the path of the Dementor. Sure, he could cast a Patronus, but he wasn't allowed to do magic outside of school. He could have faced expulsion, or worse, the Dursleys had never allowed him to keep his wand during the summer. Was that what whoever had sent the Dementor had hoped for? They must have known he could defend himself. Everyone at Hogwarts knew he could cast a Patronus after the rumours from third year. They must have seen him use it against the boggart Dementor in the maze during the third task. Had his attacker been trying to get him expelled? To snap his wand and ban him from Hogwarts, making him an easy target for Voldemort. Just then, another owl flew in through the still-open window. This one was larger and carried a longer letter, but it too didn't linger for a reply. "Harry, I'm so very sorry about what happened to your cousin. This is a truly terrible event. Rest assured, I have people investigating the matter as we speak," the letter continued. "I've spoken to members of the Ministry who handle the cover-up of magical incidents in front of Muggles. Given the circumstances surrounding Dudley's discovery, they've informed the Muggle authorities that the boy died of natural causes. The Ministry is also working to bury this information among its ranks. Unfortunately, Minister Fudge is still unwilling to acknowledge Voldemort's return, and refuses to believe that anyone other than the Ministry could have control over the Dementors. They're treating this as an isolated incident, and it will likely vanish from official records by morning. Stay inside the house and don't do anything rash. A Ministry official will likely arrive shortly to discuss your whereabouts and explain the situation to your aunt and uncle. Answer any questions they may have. You did nothing wrong here, Harry. This is all just a cruel and unfortunate case of poor timing. I will keep you updated as the case progresses. Stay safe and stay alert. Sincerely, Albus Dumbledore." Harry read the missive multiple times, staring incredulously at the elaborate cursive. A cruel and unfortunate case of poor timing. His cousin was soulless. Someone had deliberately tried to endanger Harry, and Dudley was paying the price for it. Dumbledore seemed to treat it as if it were just a minor mix-up. With a snort of disgust, Harry shook his head and tossed the letter aside. He wasn't surprised the Ministry was trying to cover it all up. It wouldn't bode well for Fudge's reputation if it got out that a Dementor had strayed far from Azkaban, hunted down the boy who lived, and attacked a Muggle in the process. Abruptly, Harry realized his hands were trembling, his breath coming in short, quick gasps. He tucked his knees up to his chest, trying to steady himself. He was fine, so why was he panicking? The danger had passed. Harry was consumed by thoughts of danger, though he knew he was safe. Dudley was the one in peril. Without thinking, he reached into his pocket, fingers closing around the cold surface of the two-way mirror. He could call Sirius to find out what was happening. But wait. Sirius no longer had the other half of the mirror. Harry swallowed hard. Usually he let Draco make the calls. It felt safer that way. But it was late, and Draco was likely in his room. Surely he could take the chance. If Draco wasn't alone, he simply wouldn't answer. "Draco Malfoy," he whispered, raising the mirror to his face. He held his breath, not daring to blink, until worried grey eyes and a faint frown stared back at him. "Harry? I wasn't expecting your call. Is everything all right? Where are you?" Draco's blonde brows knitted together as he tried to peer past Harry's head to discern his surroundings. "Draco," Harry choked out, watching as alarm spread across his boyfriend's face. "What's wrong?" "My cousin. He's..." Harry gasped, and when he exhaled, the entire story tumbled out. Draco listened, his eyes widening in horror with each word. "Sweet Salazar," he swore when Harry finished. "Thank goodness you weren't there." "But if I had been, I could have saved him. I could have cast a Patronus," Harry argued, guilt swelling inside him. "And gotten expelled for underage magic," Draco shot back sharply. "If someone has enough power in the Ministry to send a Dementor after you, they could easily ensure you're punished for defending yourself." A strange look crossed Draco's face. "I bet it was my father. He's got fudge in his pocket. He could arrange something like this easily." "Draco, no," Harry insisted. "Don't go down that road. There are plenty of people who want me dead, not just your dad." But he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that a part of him... "It would be very easy for Lucius Malfoy to have done this," Draco said. "I'll keep an ear out for any mention of it. If it was him or one of his friends, they'll no doubt be upset to hear you're okay." Draco's expression softened. "You are okay, aren't you? I mean, it's awful, but your cousin was a terrible person. You weren't exactly close." "Doesn't mean I wanted him dead," Harry spat. "Of course not," Draco agreed quickly. "I'm just saying I'd rather it be him than you. And for all he's your blood family, it's not like it was Longbottom or the twins or anything." Harry's heart twisted at the thought of any of his friends being in Dudley's position. No, Draco was right. While he wouldn't wish the Dementor's kiss on his worst enemy, let alone his brute of a cousin, part of him was selfishly relieved that no one he truly cared about had been harmed. He couldn't take another Cedric, not so soon. "Yeah, I was supposed to be here. Someone who wants me dead knows where I live." Clearly, Dumbledore's fabled protections weren't all they were cracked up to be. How had none of his guards noticed what was going on? A Dementor was pretty easy to identify. He opened his mouth to say something, but was interrupted by the doorbell ringing again. His heart dropped to his stomach. "That might be the Ministry. I need to go." "Be careful," Draco urged. "Call me back when you can." Harry cut the connection, slipping the mirror back into his pocket while keeping his wrist poised to draw his wand from its holster. He hurried downstairs, peeking through the window. Outside, he saw two men in robes. One was an aura, the crest displayed prominently on his chest. The other wore plain black robes and had a stocky build with narrow eyes. Harry hoped for the neighbours' sake that they had notice me not charms up. The gossip hounds of Privet Drive would definitely notice this. Harry opened the door cautiously, his eyes narrowing at the two wizards standing before him. "Mr. Potter," the aura greeted with a nod. Harry recognized him as the same man who had come to help arrest Rita Skeeter. Shacklebolt, wasn't it? He remembered hearing Sirius and the others mention him. "I'm Aura Shacklebolt, and this is Mr. Runcorn from the Misuse of Magic Department. May we come in?" "I haven't used any magic," Harry blurted out. Shacklebolt cracked a half-smile. "We know, Mr. Potter." Harry stepped aside to let them in. Runcorn scowled, his face twisted in distaste as he took in the plainly muggle hallway and the pictures of the Dursleys that adorned the walls. "We won't be long," Runcorn said curtly, clearly wishing to be anywhere else. "We simply need to know your whereabouts this evening." "I've been home all day," Harry replied, a sudden realization washing over him. He probably wasn't supposed to know what had happened to Dudley. "What's going on? The police were here. They said my cousin was in the hospital or something. Was it magic related?" Harry watched as Shacklebolt's expression turned grave. "It was, I'm sorry to say." "I don't know how to tell you this, Mr. Potter, but earlier this evening a Dementor made its way to Wisteria Walk and attacked your cousin on his way home. He was kissed. I'm sorry." "Found its way?" Harry echoed, incredulous, "like it was just wandering around. I thought Dementors were supposed to stay in Azkaban." "It's none of your business what the Dementors are doing," Runcorn snapped. "It is if they're sucking the soul out of my cousin," Harry shot back. Shacklebolt raised a hand in a calming gesture. "I know this must be upsetting," he said, his voice steady and even. "I promise you the Ministry is doing everything it can to get to the bottom of this." "To get to the bottom of this situation," Runcorn said. Harry doubted that. "We just need to ask you some routine questions. You say you stayed home all day?" "All day, every day," Harry confirmed, striving to keep the edge out of his voice. He knew Shacklebolt was part of his guard. He would already be aware of that fact. An unreadable expression crossed the bald wizard's face. "Right. You didn't notice anything unusual? A cold spell? Flickering lights?" "I didn't notice any of the usual signs of Dementors, no." Harry crossed his arms over his chest. "I had the lights off anyway. I was trying to get an early night." An easy lie. The light bulb in his room hadn't worked in years. The lights were always off. "An early night on a Saturday in the middle of summer?" Runcorn sneered. "I don't sleep well these days," Harry snapped back. "Nightmares." He thought he saw a smirk flicker across Runcorn's face for just a moment. Shacklebolt, however, looked sympathetic. "Understandable after what happened. Your aunt and uncle didn't notice anything?" "Not that I know of, but I haven't spoken to them much this evening." If Shacklebolt was part of the Order, part of Harry's guard, then he likely knew about the difficult relationship Harry had with his relatives. But Harry refused to give Runcorn the satisfaction of any insight into his home life. There was something about the man that made his skin crawl, his magic itching in response. What are they being told? At the moment the Muggle doctors are telling them what they believe to be true, that your cousin suffered a spontaneous brain bleed that has caused him to go catatonic and left him in a vegetative state. Mr. Runcorn and I will wait here with you for them to return and explain things properly to them." Harry grimaced. "I would really rather you didn't." "We won't be an imposition," Shacklebolt began, but Harry shook his head. "Not that." Harry took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing thoughts. "It's about the Dementor. My aunt and uncle, they're not exactly fond of magic." He glanced at Runcorn, feeling uncertain about how to express himself. "It confuses them. I think it scares them a bit too. All my aunt really knows about magic is that it killed my parents. If she finds out it killed her son as well, it would devastate them." He paused, the reality sinking in. "And they would blame me, assuming it was my fault, which in a way it sort of is. That Dementor wasn't just there by chance." "That is highly unusual, Mr. Potter," Runcorn began. "I'd say it's an unusual situation, Mr. Runcorn," Harry shot back, frustration creeping into his voice. "Please, if you have any decency, let my aunt and uncle believe their son suffered a tragic, unexpected natural death." Let them mourn without adding the confusion of magical creatures into the mix. Explaining what a Dementor is to them will be hard enough, let alone why one was out here alone. I don't want to scare them. Shacklebolt pursed his lips, considering Harry's words. Perhaps you're right. It can't hurt to let them believe what the doctors said. It doesn't change the poor boy's outcome. Tell them, don't tell them, it makes no difference to me. If they don't know, they can't go screaming about Dementors through half of Surrey and cause the Obliviation team unnecessary stress, Runcorn remarked, rolling his eyes. Harry felt a surge of anger. Did Runcorn not care even a little that a teenage boy was all but dead? Just because the boy was a muggle? Very well. I'll go with your wishes, Mr. Potter. And once again, I'm terribly sorry for your loss. The Ministry will do whatever we can to uncover the truth of the situation. If there's anything we can do to help, please let us know. Shacklebolt's tone seemed sincere, but it only fueled Harry's anger. They both knew the Ministry wouldn't do a thing. Thank you. I think I'd just like to go to bed if you don't mind. Harry cast a pointed glance at the door. Of course. Send an owl if you have any questions or concerns, or if you change your mind about telling your family and they wish to speak to an official, Shacklebolt replied. Harry knew he wouldn't be doing either of those things, but he nodded anyway, managing a tight smile. The two wizards didn't bother exiting through the door. They simply apparated away. Once they were gone, Harry let out a long breath and ran a hand through his hair. Merlin, this was a mess. The Dursleys didn't return until early the next morning. Harry was already awake when he heard the front door open. He'd barely slept, still uncomfortable in the room after getting used to his bed in Seren. His dreams had been filled with cloaked figures and rattling breaths. Petunia was sobbing quietly, and Harry wondered if she had been crying all night. He could hear Vernon murmuring to her, his voice surprisingly soft. It was clear that the only things the man truly cared about were his reputation and his son. "I'll put the kettle on," Petunia declared shakily. "No, pet, let's just go to bed. We had enough tea at the bloody hospital," Vernon sighed. If Petunia protested, Harry couldn't hear it. He listened silently as the stairs creaked under Vernon's weight and their bedroom door clicked shut. His heart was in his throat. He couldn't stay here. So far, his aunt and uncle had no idea he'd returned. If Vernon saw his face now, just after losing his son, Harry imagined he wouldn't have much of a face left by the end of it. Even if Kerry brought him food, he would still need to use the bathroom. If he stayed, they would notice him eventually. He couldn't stay here. After waiting a while, he knew he had to make a decision. Vernon's loud snores echoed from the master bedroom as Harry sat up in bed. "Kerry," he called softly. The house elf appeared instantly, balancing a tea tray with a cup of tea, 2 of his favorite chocolate biscuits, and a plate of toast topped with cherry jam. "If Master Harry wants a bigger breakfast, Kerry can cook," she offered. But Harry smiled and waved her off. "This is perfect, thanks, Kerry." He doubted he could stomach much more. Guilt coiled in him like acid, making him feel nauseous every time he thought about Dudley. "Is anyone home, Kerry, or are they all with the Order?" "Seren is empty. Everyone is at the other house, sir. Mr. Remus gave Kerry this to give to Master Harry." She pulled a folded piece of parchment from the pocket of her pinafore dress. "Cub, the Order is a bit blindsided by this whole mess. They're currently trying to figure out the next step. With any luck, they'll agree to move you here soon. Sit tight. I'll be in touch when we know more. We love you, Moony." He sighed, letting the note flutter down to the mattress. More waiting then. Thanks, Kerry. Kerry bowed and vanished, leaving Harry alone with his breakfast. He dunked a biscuit in his tea, careful not to let it break. Hopefully he would be rescued soon, whichever way it happened. He couldn't stand being in Privet Drive for long. Fortunately, Harry only had to wait until early that afternoon. Just as he was debating whether to risk a trip to the bathroom, Kerry reappeared in his room, bringing Remus with her. The werewolf immediately strode to Harry's side and enveloped him in a tight hug. "I'm so sorry, cub," he murmured. Harry leaned into the embrace. "I didn't even like Dudley," he argued weakly. Remus pulled back slightly to give him a knowing look. "That doesn't mean his death doesn't matter." "Hurt," he replied, dropping a gentle kiss on Harry's hair before straightening up. "The Order has been trying to push the Ministry into properly investigating, but it seems to be a lost cause. Since no magical beings were harmed and the Dementor has been returned to Azkaban, they seem ready to close the case." His displeasure was clear on his face. "I expected as much. Do we know who did it yet?" Harry couldn't shake the worry that Draco's father Lucius might be responsible. He had spoken to Draco again before going to sleep, just to reassure him that he was okay. The Slytherin was convinced his father was at least partly to blame. "Not yet. It's likely we never will, especially with the investigation being wrapped up. Kingsley mentioned you asked for your aunt and uncle to remain unaware." There was a hint of curiosity in Remus's tone. Harry grimaced. "If they knew it was magic-related, they'd blame me. I can't risk them thinking that, especially since I have to stay here until Dumbledore sends someone to get me." Remus's eyes flashed gold for a moment. "I won't let them hurt you ever again," he vowed fiercely. Harry clenched his jaw but remained silent. He didn't want to have that conversation, not now, and preferably not ever. "The good news is that Dumbledore has decided the Order will retrieve you during your cousin's funeral. A few people were quite surprised and upset that you wouldn't be able to say your goodbyes, but he insisted it was the safest time to get you out." "I wouldn't be welcome there anyway," Harry pointed out ruefully. He wasn't sure he would want to go even if he could. Funerals take a while, right? He had never been to one, either wizarding or muggle. Cedric's funeral had been too small. It had been nearly 2 weeks after his death, and Harry wasn't sure he could last that long at Privet Drive. "It's on Thursday. I suppose your aunt and uncle wanted to get things done quickly," Remus replied. "Harry," Remus said gently, "they'll be sending someone to collect you on Thursday at 2. "Can I come home?" Harry blurted out, unable to contain himself. "The Dursleys don't know I'm here. If I have a few days, the Order won't find out, right? The guard hasn't changed." "No, the guard is still the same. Dumbledore thinks it's unlikely that a second attack will come so soon after the first, if at all." "Then can I come home, please?" Harry hated how his voice cracked. "I don't want to stay here by myself, not even until Thursday." Remus sighed and pulled him closer again. "Oh, cub." He nosed Harry's temple affectionately. Of course you can come home, love." Harry practically melted in relief. Unlike last summer, when he had been determined to fit as much fun and freedom as possible into his last days at Seren, he felt subdued in the days leading up to Dudley's funeral. The entire household was affected. Despite Harry not being near the attack, the weight of how close he could have been hung heavily over them all. He made sure to tie up all his loose ends, writing letters to everyone he wouldn't be able to talk to until school started again. He promised Susan he'd keep going through the laws as best he could. Together, they were making good progress on the project, and she was tackling it with true Hufflepuff determination. The only person he confided in about what happened to his cousin was Neville, promising to share the whole story when they were back at school. He spent some time with Buckbeak, went for one last flight by himself, and baked cookies with Kerry in an attempt to lift his spirits. By Wednesday evening, all that was left was to repack his trunk for school. Deciding which books to bring seemed even harder this year, not only because his exams were approaching, but also because there was so much he wanted to learn before facing his next near-death experience. Severus has copies of most of those in his quarters. Harry spun around and saw Remus standing in the doorway. The werewolf was the only other adult who had been around since the Dementor attack. The rest of the Order was too busy for Sirius to escape, and Dumbledore had errands for Snape to run. Most of the time, Harry felt alone. "If there's anything you need from them, I'm sure he'll let you borrow it," Remus said. Harry glanced down at the defense texts in his lap. "That's good to know." He placed them back on the shelf, eyeing the rest of his stack. "Do you know if I'll be able to train during school?" "Harry, it's your owl year. You'll be busy," Remus began, but Harry rolled his eyes. "I think training is a bit more important than some exams, Moony," he argued. "Besides, you've all said I know enough to do well. I'm not worried about my exams." That was true. He had made significant progress since his magic had been unblocked, and was at least a year ahead in most subjects. "You'll still have a lot of homework, though, and Quidditch," Remus pointed out. Harry met the werewolf's gaze with determination. After a moment, Remus sighed. "If you insist, I'm sure Severus will find the time. Just keep Dumbledore in the dark. It might not be safe." Harry hadn't considered that angle. The last thing he wanted was for Dumbledore to become suspicious of any interactions between him and the potions master. "Okay, but I can still work on things alone." He was making good progress with his animagus transformation, and he didn't want his dueling skills to go rusty. It could cost lives otherwise. "Just remember, you're still only 15, Remus reminded him, running a hand through Harry's messy hair. "A powerful 15, but 15 all the same. Let the adults do their jobs in protecting you as best we can." "That doesn't always work out too well in practice," Harry pointed out. Still, he leaned into the comfort of Remus's presence. "I'll try, Moony," Harry replied softly. "You've got a lot on your plate this year, cub," Remus said with a faint smile. "Just focus on your classwork and your government takeover. Let us handle the rest, all right?" Harry chuckled. "Yeah, okay." The government takeover was mostly Susan's idea, but Harry was a key player in the initiative. He was the figurehead needed to advocate for change and, when the time was right, to take Dumbledore down from his pedestal. It would take time, but the heirs wanted to ensure everything was in place for when they were ready to strike. The Ministry and the Wizengamot had been allowed to languish and grow corrupt for far too long. "Are you about ready for tomorrow?" Remus asked, and Harry knew he wasn't referring to his packing. Harry felt a tightness in his chest as anxiety crept in. The thought of being surrounded by people again made him uneasy. He'd have to slip back into his golden boy persona, face Ron, Hermione, Dumbledore, and a crowd of strangers. Worse still, he could already imagine them offering their condolences for Dudley, as if they had any idea how he felt. Honestly, even Harry didn't know how he felt about it all. "I think so. As ready as I'll ever be," he said, taking a steadying breath and glancing up at Remus. What happened to Dudley is my fault. I know. I couldn't have done anything. Blame it on whoever sent the Dementor or whatever," he added quickly before Remus could interject. "But the fact is, he's dead because someone wanted me dead, just like Cedric. And I hate that he's gone. And I hate that I feel responsible. I hate that I feel sorry for them when they were so awful to me for so long. But they didn't deserve this. No one deserves this. My aunt and uncle might hate me, but they loved Dudley. And he was just a kid, you know. He was only 15. To his horror, tears began to well in Harry's eyes. Harry felt a sudden wave of comfort as he found himself wrapped in Remus's embrace, his head resting against the man's broad chest. "It's okay, cub," Remus soothed. "It's a complicated situation. You're allowed to feel whatever you need to feel. Your family may have their faults, but you're right. They didn't deserve to lose their son so young, no matter their past. Dudley didn't deserve what happened to him. But you are in no way responsible, Harry. You don't deserve any of what's happened to you either. Their tragedy doesn't change how they've treated you for so long. It doesn't redeem them." "I can't face them again, Moony," Harry whispered, tears spilling down his cheeks. "They might not know what happened, but I do. This will have broken them. I don't know what they'll do to me if I see them again." Even if they were unaware of the truth behind Dudley's death, it wouldn't stop them from blaming their misfortune on Harry. They had been doing it his whole life. Everything from a bad day at work to a sudden rainstorm had somehow become his fault, and he had always faced the consequences. "I don't know what the future holds," Remus said softly, "but I can promise you this. Sirius and I would die before we let you be alone with those monsters again. I don't know what they've done to you, cub. I hope one day you'll feel comfortable enough to tell us, but I swear to you, they won't lay a finger on you again as long as I live, even if you're forced to spend time under their roof." There was a hint of a growl in Remus's voice, a touch of the wolf that settled something deep within Harry's chest. A promise like that, coming from Remus, felt solid and real. Later that Thursday, at 1:30, Kerry dropped Harry off at the Dursleys. With his trunk at his side, he didn't even bother trying to make the room Rook lived in. His door was locked from the outside, and he knew that the next few days would be challenging. Harry knew every one of the 8 latches on the door. It had to look convincing. There was no way the Dursleys would leave him home alone with the door unlocked, no matter how long they were gone. They would rather let him make a mess than give him free access to their house. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he stroked Hedwig's feathers through the bars of her cage. She seemed unimpressed by the change of scenery, but they had to keep up appearances. His knee bounced nervously as he waited, forcing himself not to think about his aunt and uncle, what they might be doing. Had the service started yet? Were they carrying the coffin to the cemetery? He was jolted from his thoughts by the sound of apparition, multiple people arriving downstairs. Despite having anticipated their arrival, he jumped up, wand in hand, pointing it at the door. He heard muffled voices, some familiar and others not. The footsteps on the stairs had a strange rhythm, a shuffle thud, almost like someone was limping or walking with a heavy cane. "Potter!" The bark sent a shiver down his spine. He shook it off, reminding himself that this was not Barty Crouch Jr. This had to be the real Alistair Moody. "Merlin's balls, have you got enough locks on there?" "Locks?" A female voice chimed in, familiar but hard to place. "What, on the outside?" Someone jogged up the stairs, and Harry felt his cheeks burn. How many people had come to gawk at the truth of life for the boy who lived? How many members of the Order had decided to check on him since he hadn't left the house all summer? "Give us a moment, Harry." He relaxed. That was Remus. He heard several clicks in quick succession, and the door swung open. On the small landing outside his room stood Moody, Remus, and the bright-haired Aura who was friends with Charlie. This time, her hair was bubblegum pink. She grinned at him, waving. "Watcha, Harry?" Harry recognized her voice. It was Tonks, Nymphadora Tonks, Andromeda's daughter and Sirius's cousin. He kept his wand raised. "Moony," he greeted Remus with a neutral tone. "What creature was in the tank in your office the first time we had tea together?" He wanted to be sure. He wasn't taking any chances. Despite sensing with his magic that it was indeed his pseudo-godfather, it was better to be cautious. "A Grindylow," Remus replied promptly. Harry lowered his wand, sliding it back into its holster. "Constant vigilance," Moody barked, a smile twisting his scarred face. "Good lad, Potter." "It's nice to meet you, Professor Moody." "Bah!" Moody's fake eye whizzed around in its socket. "Didn't do much teaching now, did I? Just call me Moody. This is Tonks. Dumbledore sent us to get you out of here." "That's why you couldn't go to the funeral," Tonks chimed in, her hair dimming with sadness for a moment. "We're really sorry you can't say goodbye to your cousin properly, Harry." "That's not why I'm not at the funeral," Harry replied bluntly, noticing her nose wrinkle in confusion. "But I'm glad you came while my relatives were out." "Are you all packed?" Moody asked gruffly, limping forward, his eyes still whirring. Harry felt a prickling sensation at the back of his neck. Just how much could Moody see with that thing? He wasn't entirely sure. "Just about." Harry made a show of grabbing quills and parchment from his desk and tucking them into his trunk. He hadn't wanted to be completely ready, not when he was supposed to be unaware of his rescue. Stuffing some clothes in haphazardly, he shut the lid and pretended to look around one last time. "I'm ready." "Is the cat yours, or your family's?" Tonks asked curiously, gesturing toward the corner. Harry turned to the cat flap, a bitter smile crossing his face. "That isn't for a cat." He would have felt guilty about the confusion on Tonks's face, but was she really being this oblivious on purpose? He'd been locked in 8 times. "How are we getting to wherever we're going?" he asked. "Apparating," Remus replied. "It's not the most comfortable way to travel, but it's the most discreet, especially at this time of day. We'll need to make a few different jumps to avoid leaving a trail." "Mad-Eye wanted to fly you out," Tonks chimed in, a hint of amusement in her voice. "But we can't do that in broad daylight." Yes, it's a shame we can't wait until nightfall. Bloody muggles," Moody grumbled. "Let your owl free, Potter. She'll meet you there." "I would if I could, sir." Harry felt a strange sense of satisfaction from playing this part. Hedwig's cage was padlocked, just as it would have been if Vernon had truly kept him locked up all summer. "Ah, I'll get it." With a tap of Remus's wand, the padlock fell to the ground. Harry opened the cage, and Hedwig, bless her mischievous little heart, made a grand show of stretching her wings and fluffing her feathers as if she'd been trapped for weeks. She butted her head against Harry's chin, nipped him on the ear, and then soared out the open window. "All right, let's get moving. We've been dawdling too long," Moody said, straightening up. He passed Harry's trunk to Tonks and Hedwig's cage to Remus. "Take my arm, Potter." Trusting Moody to apparate him felt wrong, even though he knew this was the real deal. Remus gave him an encouraging nod over Moody's shoulder, and Harry squared his shoulders before gripping Moody's forearm tightly. When Remus had mentioned a few different jumps, Harry hadn't imagined the ride would be quite like this. The stomach-churning, disorienting chaos that followed was overwhelming. With a loud crack, they found themselves in a dingy alley. Before Harry could even take a breath, Moody released his grip, and another hand clutched his arm. "Hold tight!" With another crack, he was suddenly in a wide open field. His head spun as the hand on his arm let go, only to be replaced by a vaguely familiar arm wrapping around his waist, pulling him against a firm chest. "I've got you, cub." Another crack, and now he stood on a rocky cliff. His stomach lurched, and Remus released him. He felt a tight grip on his wrist. Then, with another crack, Harry's vision blacked out for a moment. When it returned, he was standing in the middle of an ordinary Muggle street, with Moody holding onto his wrist, practically keeping him upright. A heartbeat later, Remus and Tonks appeared, with Remus close behind Harry, discreetly steadying him. "Sorry about that, cub. It's a little much when you're not used to it, but it's the safest way." Harry thought he was getting the hang of apparition, but he realized he might never fully adjust to it. "I might be sick," he declared, hearing Tonks giggle. "Pick a point and stare at it until the world stops spinning, there's a lad," Moody instructed, his tone devoid of sympathy. "Can you read?" "Generally, yes. Right now? Debatable." Tonks giggled again, and even Moody snorted, a smirk forming on his lips. "Read this." It took Harry a few seconds for his vision to steady enough to decipher the words on the scrap of parchment Moody thrust his way. It was unmistakably in Dumbledore's handwriting. "The headquarters of the Order of the Phoenix is located at number 12 Grimmauld Place." He read it again, committing it to memory. When he looked up, he saw a whole new building squeezed between numbers 11 and 13. Suddenly, the parchment in his hand burst into flames, scattering ash around him. Ash settled on his shoes. At last, he was about to meet the Order. Chapter 43. The first thing Harry noticed when he stepped through the door of number 12 was his godfather's smiling face. Sirius! His relief was genuine. He hadn't seen the man in almost a week, and what a week it had been. He threw himself into Sirius's arms, feeling some of the tension leave him as his godfather hugged him tightly. "I've got you, pup," Sirius promised in a fierce whisper. "You're all right." Harry nearly broke down right there, but muffled voices reminded him they weren't alone. Reluctantly, he pulled back, making a face when he took in their surroundings. Sirius had mentioned the house was in poor shape, but he hadn't expected it to be so dark. "Good to see you, mate. About time you showed up." The twins were whispering, which struck Harry as odd, but they beamed at him from behind Sirius. Nudging past his godfather, George ruffled Harry's hair, tucking him between himself and Fred as they led him through a door off to the side. Harry found himself in a bustling kitchen, the smell of cooking meat making his stomach rumble. "Oh, Harry, dear!" The twins were dislodged as their mother hurried over, and Harry tried not to stiffen too much when she enveloped him in a rib-cracking hug. "Look at you! You're far too skinny, you poor thing." She patted his cheek, eyeing him with a frown. "Pale as a ghost, too. Have you been getting any sun at all?" Harry wasn't that pale, and he gritted his teeth. As far as she knew, he'd been cooped up in his room all summer. Was she trying to rub it in? "I'm afraid you can't stay long. It's almost time for the Order meeting. But I'll make you a quick sandwich to take with you. Did you have lunch?" "Never mind. You're a growing boy. You can always eat more. I'll only be a minute." Harry turned toward the table, where several people he didn't recognize were gathered. Harry felt the eyes of the room on him, each gaze filled with varying degrees of interest. Just as he was about to speak, the door swung open, and Ginny skidded in past Tonks. "You're here!" she exclaimed, beaming with delight as she practically leaped into his arms for a hug. Harry couldn't help but laugh, inhaling the sweet scent of her strawberry-scented hair. "Hi, Gin," he replied. When she pulled back, her hands remained on his shoulders as she studied him intently. "You're looking better than I thought you would. Are you all right?" Harry hesitated, unsure how much of her concern was genuine. He shrugged. All things considered, not bad. That seemed to satisfy her, and she nodded decisively. The door opened again, and Snape strode in, his familiar sneer etched on his face. Harry didn't react, though he caught the slightest flicker of approval in Snape's dark eyes at the sight of him. "I see we are to be blessed with Potter's presence once more," Snape drawled. Sirius growled in response, only to receive a sharp rap on the shoulder from Mrs. Weasley, wielding her wooden spoon. "Severus, goodness, is it time already? Kids, come on, we'd better get you upstairs. Yes, Fred, George, for the last time, that means you too. I don't care if you're of age, you're still in school, and you'll stay out of all this." With a plate piled high with sandwiches floating behind her, Mrs. Weasley beckoned Harry over. "I thought I'd put you in with Ron, dear. I'll show you the way." "Harry's taking my old room, Molly," Sirius interjected, stepping forward and placing a hand on Harry's shoulder. "Nonsense. The boys share all the time when they're at the Burrow. It's no trouble." "Harry is my godson, and this is my house," Sirius reminded her firmly. "He's had a difficult summer, and if he wants the privacy of his own bedroom, he can have it." Weasley turned to Harry, as if expecting him to argue about wanting to share a room with Ron. But Harry had no intention of doing that. He flashed a smile at his godfather. "Thanks, Sirius." "No problem, kid," Sirius replied with a grin, reaching out to snag one of the sandwiches. "Come on, I'll show you around. Just keep it down in the main hall. My mother's portrait is sleeping. She can be a bit of a hag, so you don't want to wake her up." That explained the whispering earlier. Before Mrs. Weasley could protest, Sirius grabbed the plate of food and headed for the door, with 3 redheads and Harry following close behind. They tiptoed up 2 flights of stairs, which were lined with a grotesque collection of severed house elf heads, until they reached a door with a tarnished silver nameplate. Sirius Orion Black. Sirius nudged the door open with his elbow. Inside, the room was as dark and austere as the rest of the house, but it was clear that teenage Sirius had done his best to lighten it up. A Gryffindor banner took up half of one wall, alongside a collection of Muggle posters featuring scantily clad women posing with motorbikes. Sirius flushed sheepishly. "I may have gotten a bit enthusiastic with the sticking charm when I was younger. Just wanted to annoy Mum. I'll figure out how to get them down, don't worry." Harry snorted. "It's all right. Not like they do anything for me." At least they were Muggle posters, and wouldn't wave and wink at him like the girls he'd seen in some of his dorm mates' magazines. "This was your room, huh?" "My childhood prison," Sirius replied wryly. "Until I abandoned ship and moved to the Potters. Feel free to snoop. Merlin only knows what's in here. I haven't gone through it since I left." The 3 Weasleys hung awkwardly in the doorway, and Harry beckoned them inside. "I don't mind," he assured them. "I wanted to talk to you guys anyway." "I'd better get down to the meeting," Sirius said, rolling his eyes. He set the sandwiches down on the bed and reached into his jacket pocket. "Mooney gave me this, by the way." He pulled out Harry's trunk, which he resized and placed at the end of the bed. "I think Tonks still has Hedwig's cage." "Brilliant, thanks," Harry replied. He gave Sirius one last hug before letting him leave. As soon as the door shut behind him, George raised his wand and cast a privacy ward. "Just in case Ronnikins comes snooping when he realizes you're here," he declared, perching on the edge of the bed. He raised an eyebrow at one of the Muggle women in the posters before leaning back against the wall. "So, how you doing, kid?" Harry couldn't help but snort. Kicking off his shoes, he made himself comfortable on the bed, leaving plenty of room for Ginny and Fred. He reached for a sandwich, his stomach rumbling. "I was doing great until a Dementor killed my cousin," he said flatly. All 3 redheads winced.
I'm so sorry, Harry. It's awful what happened, even if your cousin was an arse, Ginny said, squeezing his hand sympathetically. But you've been okay besides all that? Yeah, mostly.
I still have the odd nightmare about the graveyard, he admitted. But Remus has been really great at helping me work through it. I've kept busy. I'm not the interesting one, though. What's been going on here? Even though he'd been exchanging letters with the twins and Ginny through Remus all summer, there was still so much they hadn't discussed. Harry knew the basics, of course. The Order had meetings here, and in the meantime, the kids cleaned the house. But he knew the twins had figured out a way to eavesdrop, and he wanted to know just how much they knew. He was impressed by their explanation of the extendable ears, though he hid his smile when Ginny complained about Snape. Began warding the door. We don't know much about what they're doing, George admitted, but you know who has been quiet all summer. No raids, no mysterious deaths, nothing. We think he's making the most of Fudge refusing to believe he's back, gathering his forces in secret while no one's really looking for him. Harry nodded in agreement. It aligned with what little Snape had told him and what he'd sensed through his scar. Have you been getting the profit wherever you were? Ginny asked cautiously. Harry winced, understanding her hesitation. Unfortunately, yes. Even without Rita Skeeter on the payroll, the Prophet was doing a fine job of spinning absurd stories that painted him as a lunatic and Dumbledore in a similar light. He couldn't say he was surprised, and he didn't entirely mind how they were discrediting the headmaster. Still, he wasn't looking forward to returning to school. The twins exchanged identical grimaces. Yeah, it's all a bit of a mess, Fred muttered. Have you seen much of Dumbledore? Harry asked. He had been working on his plans for the upcoming year, and he worried that some of his friends might be under similar compulsion charms as he once had. Maybe that was why Ron and Hermione were reporting back to the headmaster about him. He could only hope. He's been in and out for Order meetings, stayed for dinner once or twice, George volunteered. I haven't seen him talk much to Ron or Hermione, though, except when he told them not to share anything sensitive in letters. What letters? Harry remarked, rolling his eyes. I bet he didn't care at all that I wasn't leaving the house, that they knew. Ginny bit her lip. Dad brought it up a few times. He was part of your guard at first. Dumbledore reassigned him when Dad started talking about sending a note through your window to check on you. I did wonder if anyone was remotely concerned that I didn't seem to leave my room ever, Harry said with a hint of derision. They were all just told to let you grieve, Fred confirmed. We tried to explain that you'd told us your relatives wouldn't let you have mail and what they were like, but Dumbledore wouldn't have any of it. He convinced everyone that he'd know if you were harmed in any way, and that they just had to leave you be. He said it might upset you more to have contact with the magical world before you were done grieving your loss of innocence. He made a face, and Harry mirrored it. What a load of rubbish. I'm so glad it was all a ruse, or I'd really have been in a terrible situation this summer, he mused. A shudder ran down his spine as he imagined it, being left with the Dursleys alone and helpless, right after witnessing a friend die and Voldemort rise again before his eyes. That gaping hole in his chest, left to fester all summer, he would have been in a dark, dark place. Ginny bumped her shoulder against his sympathetically. Ron and Hermione have been in their own little world all summer. They're not together, she added quickly at his surprised look, but they don't spend much time with us except when Mum makes us clean together. Hermione tries to talk to me sometimes when Ron's annoyed her, but all she wants to discuss is you and all the things we'd have to do to help you once you got here. Control me, you mean? He grimaced. Merlin, I'm not looking forward to that for the next month. Are you going to keep pretending you're friends? George asked. Or has that ship sailed? I think by now Dumbledore is pretty aware that I keep shedding his compulsions, Harry replied. I don't mind him thinking that as long as he's not suspicious about the blocks. He had spent a lot of time considering how he would navigate the upcoming school year. The time for hiding completely had passed. Let Dumbledore think he was just having a bit of trouble adjusting, a rebellious phase. Let's see how he handles Harry throwing a wrench in his plans. Hopefully, it'll keep him off balance and give Susan's scheming a chance to start crumbling his pedestal. So, we're all set to prank Ron this year? Fred's brown eyes sparkled with mischief. Harry grinned. Be my guest. Wicked, the twins chorused. Harry almost felt sorry for Ron. Almost. What else has been going on then? I thought Bill would be here. And Percy. He thought Charlie was the only one still out of the country. The siblings exchanged a knowing glance. Bill's got a flat that Gringotts set him up in. He only comes by occasionally. As for Percy, Ginny trailed off and the twins scowled. We don't talk about that prat anymore, George declared. Harry raised an eyebrow. That sounded like a story worth hearing. He's practically glued to Fudge, Fred explained. Siding with him on everything, thinks Dumbledore's lost it and that you're just an attention-seeking brat. He had a massive row with Mum and Dad before we moved in here. Said some terrible things to them, especially Dad. Stormed out, and we haven't seen him since. Mum cries every time she thinks about him. Harry let out a low whistle. Wow. He never would have expected that from Percy. Supporting the minister? Sure, he had always valued rules, order, and authority, but to turn against his family? That was surprising. Right. No talking about Percy. Got it. He hummed thoughtfully, wondering if there was anything else to catch up on. It was easy with these three. He'd been chatting with them all summer, so there wasn't much to fill in. And he definitely didn't want to dive into discussions about Dudley or Dementors just yet. Reaching for another sandwich, he grinned. So tell me, how hard should I go on the temper tantrum in front of the others? Dumbledore wanted a broken, grieving teenager, isolated from the world. Harry wondered about his friends and loved ones. He was determined to deliver on that, and more. They had spent a few hours in Harry's room when Sirius knocked, announcing that the meeting was over and dinner would be ready shortly. I'd offer you the tour, but quite frankly, the less you see of this god-awful place, the better, Sirius remarked as they headed downstairs. The twins had already apparated away to check on a potion they were brewing, and Ginny had disappeared to persuade Tonks to stay for dinner. It is a bit grim, Harry agreed, glancing around at the peeling wallpaper and dark wood panels. Was it any better when you were a kid? He couldn't imagine growing up in a place like this. A bit cleaner, Sirius replied, but the decor hasn't changed. I swear, if I'm stuck here much longer, I'm going to gut the place and remodel it. Might be a fun project once you're all back at school. If the house will let you, Harry joked. The dark magic seeped into the walls, and he had a feeling it would resist any renovations. Sirius grinned, showing his teeth. That's half the fun of it, pup. Quiet now. He put a finger to his lips and stepped cautiously into the main hall, gesturing toward a heavy velvet curtain that covered most of one wall. Harry assumed it wasn't a window. Your mum, he whispered. Sirius nodded. She'll be the first thing to go as soon as I can figure out how. I'll knock the damn wall out if I have to. The kitchen was still bustling with activity, although most of the Order members had left. Harry felt a twinge of disappointment. He was curious to meet them. He noticed Snape was gone too. Harry, Ron exclaimed from across the table. "When did you get here? Where have you been?" "In my room. I got here a bit after 2. "Your room? You're sharing with me, mate," Mum said. "Turns out Sirius cleared out his old room for me, so I'll be staying there," Harry said. "It's good to see you, Harry. You're looking well," Hermione replied, her voice cautious. She clearly knew better than to expect a warm welcome. Harry clenched his jaw. "Hermione?" He nodded in her direction. Mrs. Weasley, slightly perplexed by the stilted interaction, moved on swiftly. Sit, dinner will be ready in a few. Do you want a drink, Harry dear?" she asked, offering him a glass of pumpkin juice. She set it down in front of the seat beside Hermione, but Harry quickly moved it to claim the free space between Ginny and Sirius. Ginny squeezed his knee under the table. "Have you met Tonks yet, Harry?" she asked, gesturing to the pink-haired Aura sitting next to her. "She's great." "Briefly. Hi," Harry said, waving. Tonks grinned in response. "Hiya. Finally got your land legs back," she teased. "Just about, yeah. You're an Aura, right? I remember you from the Rita Skeeter thing." "Ah, that was a good day," Tonks said, a satisfied look spreading across her face. "Yep, that was me. Kingsley Shacklebolt, the other Aura you met the other night, is in the Order too." She gestured further down the table where the bald Aura was talking to Mr. Weasley. He looked up at the sound of his name and smiled. "It's nice to meet you properly, Mr. Potter. I'm truly sorry for the previous circumstances," he said, his sincerity evident. Harry nodded a little stiffly in response. "Tonks is also my cousin," Sirius interjected, leaning an arm across the back of Harry's chair. "I don't know if I mentioned that. Her mum's mum was my dad's sister." "Mum was disowned when she married Dad, though," Tonks added cheerfully, "so we're not technically part of the Black family anymore." "Lucky," Sirius said, rolling his eyes. "Not exactly a great club to be part of." "Tonks is a metamorph magus," Ginny exclaimed, eager to change the subject and steer the conversation away from Sirius's relatives. Harry's eyebrows shot up. "That's supposed to be really rare, isn't it?" He recalled reading about the trait in the Black family grimoire. Tonks smiled, transforming her nose into a long, narrow shape reminiscent of the old Disney cartoon character Pinocchio. "Rarer every generation," she confirmed. "I'm the only one in Britain as far as we know. There are a fair few in Europe and in the States, though. It came in handy for the disguises part of my Aura training." "She takes requests, too. Show him the duck." Ginny bounced eagerly in her seat, laughing as Tonks morphed her nose and mouth into a bright yellow duckbill. "Merlin, that never gets old," Ginny chuckled. When her face returned to normal, Tonks shot Harry a wink. "What do you think?" "Very cool," he replied, grinning. Their conversation was interrupted by Mrs. Weasley's announcement that food was ready, and chaos ensued. Dishes floated through the air as everyone summoned what they wanted, sometimes reaching for the same item and causing minor spills. Harry quickly understood what Sirius had meant about his cousin being clumsy. In her attempt to serve herself, Tonks nearly flung a beef shoulder across the table, triggered an avalanche of mashed potatoes, and somehow managed to get peas stuck in Remus's hair. "I'm so sorry, Remus," she exclaimed, her cheeks turning pink. The werewolf smiled, brushing the vegetables from his hair and vanishing them. "No worries. I've had worse from food fights back in my school days." "That was not an invitation, boys," Mrs. Weasley reprimanded, when the twins' eyes lit up with mischief. George pouted, making Harry snicker. "Do all these people live here, then?" he asked quietly, wondering how he would ever find a moment of peace and quiet. The Weasleys alone were a large crowd. The crew was bustling around, but there were at least 5 other people present. "No, they're just here for the free food," Sirius assured him. "It's just you, me, and the Weasleys here permanently. Until you lot all bugger off to school, that is." A shadow crept into his eyes, one that Harry hated to see. He pressed his knee against his godfather's. "Sometimes I wish I didn't have to," Harry admitted. "Don't be silly, Harry." Across the table, Hermione pursed her lips at him. "You love Hogwarts, and you have to go back. We have our OWLs this year." She paused, smiling. "Don't worry, I've already started working on your revision schedule, and we're mostly just cleaning around here, so you'll have time to do your summer homework." "I've already done my summer homework, Hermione," Harry replied, resisting the urge to roll his eyes. "Again? Harry, I really wish you'd let me check it this time. I'd been locked in my room for a month with nothing to do and no contact with the outside world," Harry shot back. "Homework was all I had. I think it's as good as it's going to get." That seemed to take the wind out of Hermione's sails a little. "You know we would have written to you if we could, Harry," she insisted, ducking as a plate of bread rolls nearly hit her. "But even if we could have, Professor Dumbledore told us not to put any sensitive information in a letter. There were other ways to get in contact with me. Last time I couldn't write to anyone. Ron and the twins showed up at my window." "What's the matter? Couldn't find your way without a flying car?" he retorted. "The Order was watching you. They said you were fine," Ron said, seemingly unconcerned as he stuffed his face. Harry paused, his mind racing. "What do you mean, the Order was watching me?" He needed to know exactly what that entailed, especially after what had happened with Dudley. "Dumbledore assigned you guards, of course," Mrs. Weasley informed him, bringing more gravy to the table. "After that awful business with the tournament, you can't seriously think he would leave you alone all summer. Anything could have happened to you." "And none of these guards seem concerned that I never left the house?" Out of the corner of his eye, Harry noticed Sirius wince at his icy tone. "Well," Mrs. Weasley faltered, "after what happened to poor Diggory, we thought you just needed time to process everything." "We were there to keep you safe," Tonks added hesitantly. "We didn't want to intrude." "Keep me safe, right. And I bet you all thought I was locked in my room to keep me safe too. 2 bathroom breaks a day, meals through the cat flap, and a list of chores twice my height to keep me safe." He mentally scolded himself. He hadn't meant to say that much. Beside him, Sirius stiffened, and an awkward silence fell over the room. "I'm sure your aunt and uncle were just trying to give you space, dear. It's difficult to know how to help someone grieve," Mrs. Weasley said, finally taking a seat next to her husband. "The last thing they want is to give me space. They probably think I might get up to something unnatural," Harry replied dryly. "Seriously, I had people watching me 24/7, and none of you thought it was strange that I didn't even go into the garden?" Several uncomfortable expressions crossed the faces at the dinner table. Harry didn't feel sorry for them. If it hadn't been for Sirius, Remus, and Snape, the summer he was pretending to have would have been a very real possibility. Worse, even. He wouldn't have been able to use silencing charms at Privet Drive. If Vernon had woken up from his nightmares, Harry would have faced severe consequences. "Great. Good to know people only care about what happens to me when it involves Voldemort." Several people flinched at the name. "Would Dumbledore's supposed protections have even told you if I died? If I needed help?" "Wouldn't have let any Death Eaters get into the house, Potter," Moody snapped, his electric blue eye whirling in its socket. Harry let out a cold laugh. "Yeah, because Death Eaters are the only ones who could possibly harm me in that house." "Harry, really now." He ignored Mrs. Weasley, his green eyes flashing with anger. For that matter, where was my guard when a Dementor was sucking the soul out of my cousin just around the corner? Several people at the table avoided his gaze. Kingsley Shacklebolt was among them. I'm afraid that was an error on our part. It was Mundungus's shift to watch you, and he neglected to inform his relief that he'd be leaving early for a meeting. Mundungus who? Harry's glare swept across the group, though he recognized everyone at the table. Whoever Mundungus was, he hadn't stayed past the order meeting. Probably knew Harry would want to kill him. Mundungus Fletcher, Moody replied. Thief and scoundrel, but a good set of eyes and ears to have when you're looking for unsavory types. The idiot buggered off to see a bloke about counterfeit cauldrons. Meanwhile, my cousin was dying, Harry roared. Mundungus Fletcher had better hope I don't meet him any time soon, or the only place he'll be finding cauldrons is up his arse. Harry, Mrs. Weasley exclaimed, looking scandalized. Language! You didn't even like your cousin. What do you care? Ron complained. He was a bullying prat. And because of that, he deserved to die, did he? Harry shot back. I shouldn't feel bad that he had his soul sucked out by a monster looking for me just because he was a bully. He didn't mean it like that, Harry. Hermione jumped in, always ready to defend Ron. I understand you're upset. We all do. It's terrible what happened to your cousin. Cousin? But Mundungus didn't mean any harm. He really feels awful about it. Oh, that's all right then, Harry exclaimed, rising to his feet and slamming his hands on the table. Everything's fine because Mundungus didn't mean any harm. I'll just pop back to let my aunt and uncle know, shall I? I'm sure they'd be delighted to hear it. Kingsley said you didn't even tell them about the Dementors. They don't know anything, Ron pointed out. Yeah, because they'd bloody kill me if they knew I had anything to do with it, Harry shouted, his scar starting to ache as anger coiled in his gut like a fiery snake. The amount of injuries I've had just from existing around them, you think I'd survive telling them that magic killed their precious boy? Worse, that magic aiming to kill me did it. They'd be doing Voldemort a bloody favor. Out of the corner of his eye, Harry noticed Remus's eyes flash gold, and a sick feeling washed over him. He realized he had gone too far. His mostly-for-show temper tantrum had struck too close to the truth. In his desperation to make them feel guilty for what they'd done all summer, he had revealed too much. Maybe, deep down, he wanted them to understand the reality he faced every time he left Hogwarts, the struggles he had endured for years before discovering magic. But he didn't want to be there to witness their reactions. I'm going to bed, he muttered, the chair legs screeching against the tile as he pushed it back. Just as he opened the door, several voices called his name. The velvet curtain covering Mrs. Black's portrait flew wide open, revealing a large painting of an older woman with venomous eyes. Scum! Blood traitors and filth in my house, she screeched, launching into an impressive tirade. Ignoring her, Harry stormed up the stairs to his bedroom. Merlin, he was glad Sirius hadn't made him share with Ron. He slammed the door behind him. The door barely muffled the cries from the portrait, and it took several minutes for the noise to fade into silence. Harry sat on his bed, knees drawn up to his chest, his hands pressed against his face. His scar throbbed, and the anger within him was still fresh. As he took a few deep breaths, he could sense the oily presence of the Horcrux stirring inside him. Voldemort was angry too, and that was feeding into Harry's own rage. It was a revelation that explained a lot. But not everything was Voldemort's influence. Most of it stemmed from Harry himself. He couldn't help but feel betrayed. Here were people who were supposed to care for him, to think of him as family, yet they were all too willing to leave him to fend for himself with the Dursleys, hardly giving it a second thought. They seemed content to shove him back into his box, only remembering him when it was time for him to be the Gryffindor golden boy, Harry Potter. As he fought back tears, trying to keep the raw edges of the emptiness in his chest from reopening, he almost missed the gentle knock on the door. "It's just us, pup." The door creaked open, revealing Sirius and Remus peering in with sad expressions. "Can we come in?" Remus asked softly. Harry made a sound that could be interpreted as neither a yes nor a no, but the two men took it as permission, closing and warding the door behind them. Sirius settled on the edge of the desk. "That was quite something, pup. Even James wasn't that good when he got going." His attempt at light-heartedness fell flat, and he ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Harry," Remus began, cautiously approaching the bed. When Harry didn't shout at him, Remus continued, sitting a couple of feet away on the mattress. "I know. When we took you from your aunt and uncle's house after your 3rd year, we never really addressed the situation. We were just happy to have you back, and thrilled to see you coming out of your shell at last." He reached out, placing a gentle hand on Harry's shoulder. Harry felt a warm hand resting on one of his socked feet. "Perhaps that was our mistake. We should have encouraged you to talk about things back then. But now it feels too late. We just let Severus keep giving you potions and let you push through it." "You knew about the potions?" Harry blurted out, surprised. Sirius cracked a wry smile. "You really think Kerry wouldn't tell me that healing and nutrition potions were being left in my godson's room? Come on. Do you think old Snape could keep a secret like that from his moony love?" Remus's cheeks flushed, but he didn't waver. "Severus said it was up to you to handle things in your own way, and that we should give you the space to do so. Considering his experience in the matter, I followed his advice. But Harry, if you ever need to talk about any of it, we're here to listen." "I'm over it, really," Harry insisted. "Mostly." Deep down, he knew he would never truly be past it all. He would always carry the weight of being the boy who lived in the cupboard under the stairs, at least in his heart. But he was growing, despite that. "A lot of what I said down there was just for effect, but that doesn't mean it's a lie or an exaggeration. Vernon really would have tried to kill me if he knew the truth about Dudley. And the way I described the summer, the food through the cat flap, 2 bathroom breaks a day, the chores, that's how it was before, after the incident with the bars on my window." He remembered telling them about that. It should have given them enough of an idea back then. "And the scars?" Sirius asked softly as he moved from the desk to sit beside Remus on the bed. "They're long since healed and I'm fine," Harry insisted, squeezing his eyes shut. "You, Moony, you said I'd never have to go back there. Anything else doesn't matter." "And I meant it," Remus promised. "Whatever happens, you'll never have to lay eyes on those awful people again. We'll make sure of it. But if you ever want what they did to you, if you ever want to talk about it or work through some old wounds, we're here for you. Even if you can't talk to us, I know Severus is an excellent listener. He's also pretty good with scar-reducing cream," he added with a half-smile. "Any one of the 3 of us will do whatever we can." Sirius chimed in. "We aren't exactly the poster children for happy families either. Moony's parents treated him like a monster. Mine tried to make me one, and I don't know the details of Snape's past, but it must have been bad to turn him into such a miserable git at such a young age. Ow, Moony!" Moony simply shrugged as Sirius rubbed his shoulder where he'd just been hit. "My point is, we aren't as rose-tinted as the Weasleys. We can handle it if you want to share." Harry appreciated their concern, But knowing they had their own struggles didn't make him any more eager to recount his own. "I know, Pads," he said after a pause. I think I need some sleep." "It's been a long day," Remus agreed. He leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to Harry's forehead, frowning when he noticed the inflamed scar. "Is it bothering you again?" "Not really," Harry replied with a shrug. "I'll meditate before bed. I've got my wardstone." He knew it wouldn't completely protect him from being dragged into a dream if Voldemort was determined, but perhaps it would be one of the nicer ones, like that mysterious, endless corridor, instead of visions of Voldemort torturing his servants. "If you need dreamless sleep, just call Kerry. Severus has some in the medicine cabinet at home." "Thanks, Moony." Harry managed to smile, mostly genuine but a bit strained. Remus smoothed Harry's messy hair down. "I'll see you in the morning, cub. Sleep well." As Remus left, Harry turned to Sirius, who looked like he had something on his mind. "I'll never forgive. I hate myself for going after that rat bastard instead of making sure you were okay," Sirius finally admitted, his voice trembling. Harry felt a tightness in his chest. "Sirius, no. It's not your fault. If I'd protected you like I was supposed to, you never would have gone to them," Sirius insisted, tears welling in his grey eyes, his face pale. "But I can't undo what I did. All I can do is promise to do better in the future. You're always my first priority, pup. No matter what. I swear I'll be a better godfather to you." "You're the best godfather," Harry said, shuffling closer for a hug. "Let's face it, Dumbledore probably would have found a way to get you out of the picture somehow. He needed me to grow up thinking I was worthless." Sirius flinched at that. "It all worked out in the end, and you're here now. Please, let's just put that part of my life behind us, okay? It doesn't matter anymore." Sirius sighed, tilting his head to lean against Harry's. "If you say so, kid. But if you ever want to talk, or don't tell Moony, but if you ever want them to pay for what they did to you. I've already served 12 years in Azkaban. I figured I've got some room to do a few things to make it worthwhile." There was a darkness in his stormy gaze, not the same kind of darkness as Voldemort and his followers who tortured for fun, but more like the fierce protectiveness in Narcissa Malfoy when someone threatened her son. A reminder that Sirius had been raised among dark wizards and knew all their secrets. He wasn't above using them. "They aren't worth it, Siri," Harry insisted. "What happened to Dudley is enough. He'd already done enough damage to that family just by existing. He was too tired to seek vengeance. He just wanted it all to be over." "I suppose, but the offer stands." Sirius winked, kissed Harry's forehead, and got to his feet. "I'll leave you to settle in. I'm in the room at the far end of the hall if you need anything. Molly and Arthur are upstairs, and the kids are all on the floor below. You should be pretty undisturbed in here." "Thanks, Pads. I'll see you in the morning, okay?" "Love you, kiddo." "Love you too." Once Sirius had left, the door closed quietly behind him. Harry slumped against the headboard, letting out a long, drawn-out sigh. It had been a long week, but he couldn't shake the feeling that it was nothing compared to the weeks ahead until he returned to Hogwarts. Chapter 44. When Harry entered the kitchen the next morning, an awkward hush fell over the gathered occupants. He suppressed a grimace, though a flicker of satisfaction stirred within him. Good. Let them feel guilty after his outburst the night before. They deserved it. He almost made a beeline for Remus. At Seren, mornings often began with the werewolf handing him a cup of tea, ruffling his hair, and sharing the training plan for the day, while Harry let the caffeine pull him into wakefulness. But he couldn't do that here. Not only would there be no training, but as far as most of the people in the room were concerned, Harry had barely interacted with Remus since the man had left his teaching post. Fortunately, Sirius was standing by the kettle and offered up a steaming mug with a half-smile. "Morning, pup," he greeted. "Sit down, Harry dear, eat up, you must be starving," Mrs. Weasley insisted, then froze at her choice of words. "Do you want bacon or sausages? Or both?" "I'll put both on. Growing boys need their protein." Her slightly too high voice made Harry wince. She placed the plate at the empty setting beside Ron, but Harry moved it over to sit by the twins instead. Mrs. Weasley pursed her lips at that, but didn't say anything. Harry wondered how long everyone would be tiptoeing around him after last night. Maybe, if he was lucky, they would keep their distance until school started up. "Did you sleep all right, Harry?" Remus asked, a knowing glint in his eyes. Harry shrugged. "Well enough." He gave the man a weighted look. No nightmares. Something in Remus's shoulders relaxed. "Glad to hear my old posters didn't scare you off," Sirius joked. Harry snickered. "I'm just glad they don't move." "There's still the other bed in my room, mate," Ron piped up around a mouthful of fried egg. "No thanks. I'm fine where I am," Harry assured calmly. The awkward silence lingered. No one seemed to know what to say, whether to Harry or to anyone else. Finally, the tension was shattered when Ron's eyebrows suddenly turned bright pink, rapidly growing into two enormous bushy caterpillars that nearly took over his forehead. The twins exchanged smirks and high-fived each other, while Harry burst out laughing. "Oi!" Ron exclaimed, slapping a hand to his face, panic flashing in his wide eyes as he felt the oversized brows. Mrs. Weasley shot a glare at the twins. "Boys, honestly, what have I told you about using magic at the table?" She pulled out her wand and tapped Ron's forehead, trying to reverse the spell. There was a brief pause, and then the eyebrows shuddered, blooming into glittery pink flowers. Ginny erupted with laughter, and even Remus's usually neutral expression broke into a grin. Ron's panic deepened. "What happened? What did they do?" He raised both hands to cover his eyebrows, while Hermione tried to tug them away for a closer look. "Fred! George!" Mrs. Weasley barked, her tone stern. The twins raised their hands in surrender. "It'll go away on its own," George promised. "I think they're rather fetching," Fred added, yelping as Mrs. Weasley brandished a wooden spoon. "Ow, Mum! It's just a bit of fun," Fred protested. "You'd think being old enough to use magic outside of school would make you more responsible with it," Mrs. Weasley scolded. Harry, however, didn't see the problem. It wasn't hurting Ron, and the twins wouldn't use any magic they couldn't undo. It wasn't like they'd burned his eyebrows off or anything. "Leave them be, Molly, it's a great bit of magic," Sirius chimed in, giving the twins a thumbs up. This only seemed to amplify Mrs. Weasley's frustration. "Don't you go encouraging them, Sirius Black. They'll get themselves into trouble." "Trouble is brewing if they keep this up. You of all people should know better." "I of all people?" Sirius repeated, his tone indignant. "What exactly does that mean?" Mrs. Weasley's lips pressed into a thin line, but she chose not to respond. "Let's all just calm down," Remus said, placing a reassuring hand on Sirius's shoulder. "Ronald, I'm sure your eyebrows will be back to normal in no time. If not, the twins will be happy to fix it. Molly, the boys are just having a bit of harmless fun. With all the serious discussions lately, I can't really blame them." "Leave it, Hermione," Ron grumbled, swatting her hands away from his face. "You can't do anything anyway." "Speaking of serious discussions," Harry interjected loudly, deciding it was the perfect moment. "When's the next order meeting?" I feel like I've got a lot to catch up on." He was tired of being kept in the dark to allow time to grieve. The Order didn't realize how much he already knew, but he refused to be sidelined until it was time to face Voldemort again. "See?" Sirius exclaimed triumphantly. "I told you he'd want to be involved." "Harry, dear, don't be silly. You're far too young to be in the Order," Mrs. Weasley dismissed, ignoring Sirius entirely. "You don't need to be involved in all that." "I think I'm already involved," Harry pointed out. "If someone's sending Dementors after me, I want to know what else to expect." "You're safe here. This place is unplottable and under the Fidelius charm. No one can reach you here," Mrs. Weasley assured him. "Just relax and enjoy the rest of your summer, dear." "Yeah, okay, I'll just relax here while someone might be sending another Dementor after my aunt and uncle, or worse," Harry snapped back, unable to hold back his frustration. "And what about when I get to school? I won't be safe there." "That's ridiculous. Hogwarts is the safest place in the world. Cedric Diggory died last year." Harry shot up from his seat, his hands slamming against the table. The room fell silent in the wake of his outburst. "Both of us were kidnapped by a Death Eater who had been teaching us all year without anyone noticing. The year before that, there were Dementors crawling all over the castle. And before that, a massive basilisk. Not to mention Voldemort himself possessed a teacher. Hogwarts has never been safe, and I want to know what's going on. I've gone all summer without a scrap of information, not even a bloody Quidditch score." "You had your wireless," Ron pointed out. Harry glared at him. "You know damn well the Dursleys lock my trunk under the stairs the moment I get home from the station. I barely managed to smuggle my homework out. If they'd heard a radio in my room, I'd have been dead." Everyone winced at the reminder of his life with his Muggle relatives, but Harry couldn't bring himself to feel bad about mentioning it again. "You don't need to go looking for trouble," Mrs. Weasley tried to soothe him. "You've got exams to focus on." "Surely it's easier not to go looking for trouble if I know where the trouble is to begin with," Harry countered. She seemed momentarily at a loss, her face reddening as she stuttered out objections. "The Order is for adults, Harry," she said finally, folding her arms over her chest. "I think Harry's close enough after everything he's been through," Sirius replied. "Why shouldn't he be allowed to sit in? He deserves to know what Voldemort's up to, especially when it involves him." "He's just a boy," Mrs. Weasley shot back, now turning her attention to Sirius. "You're supposed to have his best interests at heart, not be sending him off to war before he's even taken his OWLs." "I'm not saying we should start sending him out on missions for Merlin's sake," Sirius exclaimed. "I just think he deserves to know what's going on." "If Harry gets to go to meetings, I want to go too," Ron demanded. Mrs. Weasley whirled around, glaring at him. "None of you children are attending Order meetings, and that's final," she screeched. "If you don't like it, take it up with Dumbledore. I'm sure he'll agree with me." Harry scowled. There was no way Dumbledore would allow him to attend Order meetings. He needed Harry to remain as oblivious as possible. Sirius wore a scowl as well, and even Remus looked unimpressed by the whole argument. Some of Harry's frustration cooled. He knew they would tell him anything he needed to know. It was just infuriating to feel so close to the action, yet still be expected to keep his head down and pretend to be an ordinary teenager without a care in the world. He couldn't even vent his frustrations in a duel with Snape or on the Quidditch pitch. God, he missed home already. Apparently, while Harry and the other teenage members of the household were too young to be part of the Order, they weren't too young to help make the house habitable for it. After breakfast, he was handed a rag and a spray bottle and sent with Ron and Hermione up to the drawing room. They were tasked with clearing out the china cabinet and checking for infestations. "Infestation of what?" Harry asked, grimacing in disgust. Hermione pursed her lips. "Doxies. We got most of them out of the curtains yesterday before you arrived, but there might be more hiding elsewhere." She opened the china cabinet, coughing as a cloud of dust swirled up. "Watch your fingers, boys. Some of this stuff might be cursed." The shelves of the cabinet were filled with all sorts of odds and ends, small weapons, tarnished silver boxes, and several crystal potion vials. Harry stared at the vials filled with strange contents and a coiled snakeskin. He watched as Hermione picked up one of the boxes and tossed it into a rubbish bag, his brow furrowing in concern. If these items were potentially cursed, shouldn't they be more careful? At the very least, they should have their wands ready. But neither Hermione nor Ron had theirs with them. Did they really think their magic wouldn't be traced here? After all, the house was unplottable. Yet, as he observed them, neither of them even cast a shield charm. "If this stuff is dangerous, shouldn't someone older be dealing with it?" Harry asked cautiously. Hermione glanced over at him, her tone dripping with condescension. "They're busy with the important things, Harry. Besides, Mrs. Weasley scanned everything yesterday and said it's probably fine. We just have to be careful." "We've dealt with worse," Ron chimed in. Harry bit his tongue, resisting the urge to remind them that they had faced worse threats with their wands. If something truly came after him, he could always rely on wandless magic. As he continued to pull items from the cabinet, he couldn't help but wonder what kind of scan Mrs. Weasley had done. Some of these objects felt saturated with dark magic. Suddenly, Ron yelped as a snuff box tried to snap at his fingers, sending it flying into the rubbish bag. Harry pulled out a large silver serving tray, embossed with the Black family crest, and looked around. "Is there somewhere Sirius wants us to put this stuff?" he asked. "Mum said just chuck it all," Ron replied dismissively. "It's all dark. It's not like Sirius has any use for it anymore, right?" He snorted. At that, Harry's fists clenched at his sides. Did she even ask Sirius about it? These items were family heirlooms, centuries old. They represented the Black family legacy, his family legacy. It wasn't even cursed, it was just a serving tray. "Sirius hates this house," Hermione reminded him. "He doesn't want anything to do with his family." That didn't sound like something Sirius would say. Since learning that Harry was his heir, Sirius had been determined to redeem the Black family name, no matter what it took. But Harry didn't want to spark another argument, so he reluctantly tossed the tray into the bin bag and turned back to the cabinet. His frown deepened as he recoiled. In the corner of the cabinet, tucked behind a vase that Hermione had just removed, lay a gold locket embossed with the letter S. A chill ran through him. It pulsed with dark magic, familiar dark magic. It felt the same as the oily, repulsive sensation he experienced from his scar. His heart leapt into his throat. Carefully, using the rag to cover his hand, Harry reached for the locket. It didn't seem to react as he picked it up, but he could feel the magic brushing against his own, like being splashed with cold water. He shuddered, glancing over at Ron and Hermione, who were bickering over a crystal bottle that Ron insisted contained blood. Taking advantage of their distraction, Harry slipped the rag-wrapped locket into his trouser pocket, determined to ignore the waves of magic emanating from it. He would examine it later in his room. Yet, in the back of his mind, a sinking certainty settled in. He already knew what it was. The question was, how the hell had it ended up here? Once they had emptied the cabinet, an endeavour that took several hours and more than a few close calls with cursed objects, Hermione insisted they move it to check for doxies nesting behind it. Just as they were preparing to lift the heavy piece of furniture, the drawing-room door swung open. "Lunch is—" "Whoa, whoa, what are you three doing?" Bill Weasley exclaimed, his eyes widening in alarm at the sight of them. "Clearing the cabinet, like Mum said," Ron replied with a shrug. "Thought we'd check it for—" "Doxies," Bill said, glancing between the cabinet, the overflowing rubbish bag, and Harry. Harry responded with a discreet nod and a pointed look, silently conveying his thoughts on the situation. "I told Mum I'd handle that," Bill exclaimed, waving his wand to conjure a shield over the rubbish bag. "Bloody hell, what was she thinking? You three could have been killed." "We were fine," Ron protested. "None of you should be touching anything in this house without an adult present. There are all sorts of curses on everything. Just the other day, Tonks and I found a hairbrush that was enchanted to bite your skull, just sitting on a shelf." Ron paled at the thought, and Hermione gasped. "But Mrs. Weasley said it was safe. She checked it," she stammered, her voice shaky. Bill's gaze shifted back to Harry, who shook his head slightly. The contents of that cabinet were definitely not safe. "It's not your fault," Bill reassured them. "I just need to have a word with Mum about the kinds of tasks she's assigning you. Anyway, leave that thing where it is. Lunch is ready. And hey, Harry, good to see you." "Hi, Bill," Harry replied, trying to sound casual, as if he hadn't already seen the redhead that summer. "The twins mentioned you were around." He hesitated, not wanting to raise any suspicions, but also not wanting to go to lunch with the locket still in his pocket. "Hey, can I borrow you for a second? There's a locked drawer in the desk in my room. Sirius can't remember locking it, and he thought we should get you to take a look first, just in case." Bill frowned, but noticed the urgency in Harry's eyes and nodded. "Yeah, no problem. It'll only take a second. You two go on ahead and tell Mum we'll catch up," he said to Ron and Hermione. Ron, ever eager for a meal, dragged a reluctant Hermione along. Hermione came down the stairs just as Harry led the way to his bedroom. Once inside, he warded the door. "There's not actually a locked drawer in the desk, is there?" Bill asked, glancing at the desk. Harry grinned lopsidedly. "There is, but Sirius knows exactly what's in there, and he says I won't open it if I know what's good for me," he replied dryly, chuckling at Bill's look of mild disgust. "No, I wanted to show you this. I found it in that cabinet we were clearing out." Carefully, he dug out the locket and placed it on the desk, nudging aside the rag so Bill could see it clearly. "It has the same magic as my scar, Bill. I think it's another Horcrux." "Another?" Bill asked, aghast. "You think he made more than just you?" "I wouldn't put it past him. Voldemort had already proven he was willing to take innocent lives. Even if it's not, it feels awful and needs to be destroyed, but I really think it is, Bill." Bill scanned the locket with several spells, his expression growing graver by the moment. "I think you're right, mate." Reaching into the pocket of his leather jacket, Bill pulled out a dragon hide bag and levitated the locket inside. Immediately, Harry felt the pressure of the magic ease off. "There. That'll keep it protected until I can get it back to work and do some investigating. I'll take care of it, don't worry, Harry." He pocketed the bag again and clapped Harry on the shoulder. "I'm sorry about your cousin, by the way. Awful stuff." "Yeah," Harry agreed, his heart clenching briefly. "I suppose you've heard it's all being swept under the rug." "Merlin forbid the Ministry take responsibility for anything," Bill retorted wryly. "But they'll get theirs eventually, once the right people are in power." He squeezed Harry's shoulder, nudging him toward the door. "Come on. If we don't hurry up, we'll miss our chance." Ron will have eaten everything, Harry said with a snort. Even Ron might struggle with the massive amount of food Mrs. Weasley cooked, never quite sure how many people she'd be feeding. But Harry was hungry, so he followed Bill down to the kitchen, both of them tiptoeing past Mrs. Black's portrait. As they sat down to eat, Bill tried to tactfully explain to his mother that the kids shouldn't be dealing with cursed objects unsupervised. "Well, there's only so much cleaning they can do without their wands," she replied, and Bill grimaced. "Maybe they shouldn't be cleaning either," he suggested. He wasn't going to point out that they could definitely use magic without getting into trouble. Harry wondered if Mrs. Weasley had forbidden everyone from mentioning that to Ron, Ginny and Hermione. "It's summer, Mum. Just let them relax." "The kids have plenty of time to relax, Bill, don't worry," Mrs. Weasley assured him. "But if I didn't give them anything to do, Merlin only knows what sort of trouble they'd get into." She laughed, shaking her head. "Though I do see what you mean about the cursed cabinets. They can stick to taking down wallpaper until they're back at school. There's certainly plenty that needs to go." Harry glanced over at Sirius. He didn't seem to be paying much attention to the conversation, focused instead on a piece of parchment with Tonks. After a month of sharing the house with the Weasleys, he'd probably given up on arguing. Harry would have too. Once he finished his lunch, he ducked out quickly, ignoring Hermione's call to go over their summer work together. He caught up to Sirius, who was heading up to his own room. "What's up, pup?" the animagus asked with a grin. Harry shrugged. "I feel like I've hardly seen you since I got here." He didn't say much more, acutely aware of the portraits on the walls, their painted gazes following him as he and Sirius made their way up the stairs, the back of his head, and he wondered how many of them were truly loyal to the head of the Black family. Probably not enough to make it safe to talk. "I know what you mean," Sirius agreed. "Why don't I help you get your room together? Let's move the last of my teenage stuff out of there." Harry felt a wave of relief that his godfather seemed to catch the hint. They headed to Harry's room and immediately put up wards. "You all right, kid?" Sirius asked, concern etched on his face. Harry sighed. "Fine, just wishing I was back at Seren. "Tell me about it," Sirius said, humming sympathetically. "How was your morning? Were Ron and Hermione awful?" "Honestly, they barely talk to me most of the time. I don't think they're trying very hard to stay friends with me. Maybe they had gotten too used to not having him around." While Sirius fired random spells at the scantily clad women on the wall, trying to unstick them, Harry recounted the morning's adventures with the cabinet, along with the locket he had given to Bill. Sirius's expression darkened. "Bet it was bloody Reggie," he muttered. Harry raised an eyebrow in confusion. "Reggie?" "My little brother, Regulus. He was a Death Eater. Died when he was 18. Either he messed up something important or he tried to run. We were never sure. There was never a body recovered. He just showed up as dead on the family tapestry one morning. Little idiot." Sirius scowled, but the sadness in his eyes made Harry's heart ache. 18 was far too young to be serving a Dark Lord, let alone to die because of it. "You think Voldemort gave him the Horcrux? What, to look after?" "This house is safer than most places," Sirius pointed out. "It'd be a good spot for it. You know, if I hadn't come along," he added with a sharp grin. "Or maybe old Voldy hid it here himself. He certainly visited a lot. My mum thought he was brilliant. He could have tucked it away and left no one the wiser." Sirius shook his head, as if trying to shake off old memories. "Lucky you found it, then. Bill will take care of it. Just add it to the pile of junk from this house I'm paying the goblins to destroy." Ron said Mrs. Weasley told them to just chuck everything out, even the stuff that isn't cursed. Sirius's smile twisted. Oh, I'm sure she did. It's easy to be careless with things when they don't belong to you, isn't it? He looked up at Harry, and his gaze softened. Don't worry, pup. Molly thinks I'm disposing of all the rubbish bags she sets aside to be thrown out. Really, I'm going through them with Mooney and Carey. The cursed stuff needs proper handling, and anything worth keeping is going to the family heirloom vault, just in case you want it when you're older. Or your boyfriend does, he added with a wink. He and Sissa have just as much of a right to it as we do, I think. Harry's shoulders slumped in relief. Good. I know you've got bad memories of your family, he said cautiously. I wasn't sure if that would extend to the things they used to own. The Black family wasn't always awful, Sirius replied. It's just in the last century or so that a bunch of them got mixed up with Grindelwald, and it all went downhill from there. But a few generations of rubbish shouldn't make the whole family a write-off, and I'll be damned if I let Mundungus Bloody Fletcher make money from selling my family's silverware, he added with a growl. Seriously? He tried that? Harry asked incredulously, outrage bubbling up as Sirius nodded. Why is this Fletcher bloke even in the Order? He sounds useless. He's Dumbledore's contact in the less reputable parts of the magical community, Sirius replied, rolling his eyes, as if he's even good at that. The idiot's useless in a fight, has double-crossed half the dodgy dealers in the country, and can't be trusted as far as you can throw him. But Albus insists he's useful, so he stays. Merlin only knows what plans the old goat has for him. Harry scowled. He'd like to have 5 minutes alone with Fletcher. He pushed his bloodthirsty urges aside, grinning when a spell from Sirius sent all the posters fluttering to the ground. There we go, the animagus cheered, vanishing the posters with a flick of his wand. Knew I'd get there eventually. He turned to Harry and winked. You can put up pictures of sexy boys now, if you want. I think I'll pass, thanks, Harry replied with a snort. Yeah. Don't want Draco getting jealous, Sirius teased, only to yelp when Harry shot a stinging hex at him. Oi, you've gotten far too used to doing magic whenever you want. I haven't done any in front of the others, don't worry, Harry assured him. They still think they'll get in trouble. Has no one explained to them how the trace laws work? Sirius shrugged. They're Molly's kids. If she doesn't want them doing magic, that's her problem. I don't see why she's so determined to lie to them, though. They'd be able to clean up much faster with magic. Wouldn't we just? Harry grasped. It's like being back at the bloody Dursleys. I thought you said every black property had a house elf. A dark look flickered across Sirius's face. There is technically a house elf bound to this house. His name is Creature, but he's mad as a box of monkeys and dangerously obsessed with my mum and the darker side of the family. I didn't think it would be safe to have him around with the Order needing secrecy and everything, so I sent him off to one of the unoccupied black properties where he couldn't do any harm. Why didn't you bring Carey here and give Dumbledore access to a good black house elf? Sirius retorted. Worse, giving Molly access to one of my elves. She'd boss poor Carey around like she was the head of the family. She certainly has no trouble doing that to me and everyone else under this roof, conveniently forgetting it's my roof, and I'm the one who allows her and her family to live here. Besides, he added with a mischievous smirk, cleaning the house by hand gives everyone something to do. It made it easier for me to come see you at Seren while they were all occupied. Dumbledore and Molly are the ones who want it clean and free of cursed objects. It doesn't bother me at all. I grew up surrounded by this filth, and it's still cleaner than Azkaban. He winked at Harry. "I'm not going to be here any longer than I have to, pup. But if they want to slave away with rags to make this place presentable, they can be my guests." Harry snickered to himself. "So you do know how to be a bit Slytherin when it suits you," he teased playfully. Sirius grinned, a devious glint in his eyes. "I don't know what you're talking about, pup. I am the very epitome of a Gryffindor. Just as much as I am." "Exactly," Sirius agreed, still grinning. Harry couldn't help but smile back. At least he had allies in this awful house. He could survive the next few weeks. Later that night, Harry made sure the house was quiet and his door was warded before he pulled a small silver mirror from his bedside drawer and propped it up on his knees. "Draco Malfoy," he murmured quietly. It took a moment, but soon Draco was staring back at him through the glass. Just seeing him made Harry's heart race, warmth flooding to his fingertips. "Where are you now?" Draco asked, eyeing him curiously. "That isn't the Muggle's place." "I can't tell you where," Harry said firmly. "I physically can't tell you." Understanding flickered in Draco's silver gaze. "You're with them, then? Dumbledore's lot?" "Unfortunately," Harry sighed. "It's nice to see the twins and Ginny again, but you're also stuck with Weasley and Granger," Draco finished knowingly. "Are they being awful?" "Not as bad as I expected, honestly. It's mostly Ron's mum trying to push us together, even when everyone else can see we're not friends anymore." Thanks to Mrs. Weasley's meddling, he'd been forced to sit between Ron and Hermione at dinner. He'd survived by ignoring them entirely and talking to Ginny, who sat across from him. To their credit, Ron and Hermione didn't seem eager to talk to him either. I think they realized they went too far by ignoring me all summer, after I maybe yelled at them a bit. One of Draco's pale eyebrows rose, and Harry recounted his little outburst from the other night. By the end, Draco was biting his lip to stifle his laughter. "And you say I'm dramatic," he teased, shaking his head. "You can't say they didn't deserve it," Harry countered, feeling heat rise to his cheeks. "Oh, that and more. I'd have hexed them all for leaving you alone like that." There was a protectiveness in Draco's tone that made Harry blush even more, but for entirely different reasons. "Still, be careful. You don't want to alienate yourself from them entirely, not this early in the game. You don't know what the headmaster expects of you." Harry scowled. Merlin, he wished he didn't have to play Dumbledore's stupid game. "I know," he assured, "but it's fine if he thinks I'm naturally shedding the compulsions. Apparently that's normal during puberty, especially after traumatic events. Remus says so," he added with a fond roll of his eyes. "As long as I can get through the year with him thinking I still trust him, and thinking I don't know much more than he's allowed me to find out, I should be all right." It was a delicate balance to maintain, especially when all he wanted was to hex the man into oblivion. But until Harry was in a better position to fight, he had to play it safe. With the discovery of a second Horcrux, something he hadn't even shared with Draco for his own protection, he had no idea how long it would take to be ready to confront Voldemort. He just hoped he could hold on until then. "You're putting a lot of faith in Dumbledore, assuming you can outwit him," Draco remarked, his expression reflecting his discontent. Harry smiled at him. "Draco, Dumbledore thinks no one can outsmart him. He's spent years believing he's infallible. He's not going to lose sleep over a 15-year-old boy who's just dealing with a bit of teenage angst. The worst he'll do is make Ron and Hermione cling to me like glue once we're back at school." "They better not," Draco muttered, scowling. "I can't go a whole year with just our public facade. Even the study group doesn't know the truth." "We'll figure something out," Harry promised. I won't let that happen. He knew he wouldn't survive the school year without his private meetings with Draco. He'd go mad before Christmas. Besides, you should be the one to be careful. You've got a bloody Dark Lord in your house. Draco grimaced. Don't remind me. How bad is it? Draco opened his mouth, but Harry gave him a pointed look. Honestly. With a sigh, Draco replied, "It's bearable. Obviously, I hate it," he added quickly, "but I'll survive. I'm more worried about Mother. She's expected to actively participate in whatever that madman requires. I just have to keep my head down and agree with everything he says at mealtimes." Harry bit his lip. "It's only a few more weeks. For me," Draco said, "not for Mother." Heart aching, Harry wished he could reach through the mirror and hold his boyfriend close, to kiss away the pain in his eyes. "She knows she has options," he said instead. "She's making her own choices, and she won't take on more than she can handle. Your mum is strong, Draco." "She shouldn't have to be," Draco burst out angrily. "Not in her own damn house." I know. Harry hated that it was 3 weeks until he would see Draco again. He hated that there was nothing he could do to help. "If anything happens to her, Harry..." Draco trailed off, fear etched on his face. "We won't let it," Harry assured softly. They both understood he couldn't control that, but if pretending helped Draco, he would do it without hesitation. The sight of Seren ahead made Remus's shoulders relax, even as guilt twisted within him. He felt bad for being so happy to be home while Sirius and Harry were stuck at Grimmauld. But his happiness was more about the person inside than the place itself. He found Severus in the smaller living room, the more private one they preferred when they wanted to be alone, away from their bedroom. The Slytherin looked up, sympathy clouding his dark gaze. "You do not want to be in that house right now. Hell, I'm glad I'm not in that house right now," Remus declared, dropping onto the sofa beside his partner. He had only stopped in for a couple of hours, dinner and a little time afterward, but that was enough for the tension to wrap around him, making his hackles rise and his mind itch in the corner where the wolf resided. It wasn't just about Harry either. The way Molly was treating Sirius made him want to yell at her. While some of that frustration stemmed from the approaching full moon, a lot of it was just his own exasperation. Did she not realize what she was doing to them? Sirius, she was lucky he was in a much better mental state than he was pretending to be. Otherwise, she might have pushed him into doing something reckless just to escape the house, escape her. Maybe that was her intention, he thought, scowling. "I can imagine, after the things Potter let slip when he arrived," Severus said, a faint frown crossing his face. He had left by that point, but Remus had filled him in on everything that had happened during dinner and afterward, particularly the troubling details about Harry's home life. "I swear," Remus growled, his eyes flashing gold, "if I ever see Petunia again..." "She is not worth your anger," Severus replied, his lips quirking ruefully. "Believe me, I've known that woman since she was a girl, and frankly, she's worth very little indeed. As for her husband, he's worth even less, but somehow deserves a lot more." His voice turned dangerously low, a murderous glint in his eyes. It might have frightened someone else, but Remus could only agree. It pained him to know how those people had treated his cub. "At least he's away from them. He has us now." Remus scowled briefly, his knee bouncing restlessly. "It would be better if we could get him away from Molly and Dumbledore too, but it's a step." "Indeed, and while the company at Grimmauld may not be ideal, at least he will have the 3 red-headed demons he actually likes." "And black," Severus added, his tone far less contemptuous than it had been a year ago. Remus grinned. Suddenly, a thought struck him, igniting a spark of heat within him. There was a much more productive way to channel his restless energy. "Meanwhile, the two of us have this place to ourselves," he drawled playfully, his intentions clear. Severus's eyes darkened as they traced over Remus's form. He hadn't exactly aimed for this when he had come home, but it was certainly a far better way to relieve his tension than simply punching a wall. "Or cursing something," Severus remarked, his tone surprisingly agreeable. "That is a benefit." He set his book aside, and Remus seized the moment. With a quick motion, he slid a hand into Severus's dark hair and pulled him into a heated kiss. Severus didn't back down easily. He pushed back, dominating the kiss and maneuvering until Remus found himself pinned against the arm of the sofa. "You're sure no one else is coming home?" Severus asked, his brow raised. "Nope," Remus replied, popping the P playfully. "Just us, all night, I promise." The look in Severus's eyes sent a thrill through Remus, and he reached up to loosen his tie, tossing it carelessly to the floor. In response, Severus's long, skilled fingers were already working on the buttons of Remus's shirt. Not wanting to be the only one undressed, Remus hurried to match him, peeling the black fabric off Severus's pale skin. The flickering firelight cast long shadows, accentuating the contours of Severus's collarbones and the definition in his arms. Remus playfully bit his shoulder, eliciting a sharp jerk of Severus's hips. "What are you after, Wolf?" Severus growled, and Remus couldn't help but smirk at the question. "Whatever you're willing to give me," he replied, leaning back against the sofa. Though Severus was usually the more reserved of the two, there were times when Remus needed to be pulled out of his own head, and Severus excelled at that. His dark eyes sparkled with desire as he reached for his wand. Within moments they were both naked, and Remus gasped as the cool air met his heated skin. Then Severus was over him, pressing hard against him, those talented hands wrapping around Remus's arousal while their lips hungrily met. As the kiss deepened, they both realized it wasn't quite enough. Parting with a ragged gasp, Severus stood, and Remus seized the moment to admire his naked form before being pulled to his feet. He wondered if they were heading to the bedroom, but instead Severus gently maneuvered them both onto the plush rug, straddling Remus's hips. Remus smirked. "In front of the fire? Such a cliché," he teased, arching up as Severus grasped his hands, raising them over his head and pinning them to the floor with one hand. Remus whined, feeling a sharp wave of arousal. He knew he could easily break Severus's hold with his werewolf strength, flip them over, and change the dynamic, but part of the thrill was letting Severus pin him down like this. Besides, Severus had spells to keep him in place if he truly wanted him still. This was more for show, but it was more than enough. Severus was methodical as he kissed his way down Remus's body, deliberately avoiding the one spot Remus wished he would touch the most. Then, out of nowhere, Severus summoned a vial, and Remus didn't mind at all as an amber pillow was shoved unceremoniously under his hips. There was no holding back between them. Severus knew exactly how to make him fall apart, driving into Remus with abandon. Each thrust was perfect, sending stars bursting behind Remus's eyelids. In that moment he couldn't remember what had made him angry, barely recalling his own name. All that mattered was Severus inside him, over him, holding him down and making him feel alive. He came with a loud shout, and Severus followed not long after, delivering one last powerful thrust. His grip on Remus's wrists was almost painfully tight as he rode out his orgasm. When he was finally ready to move, he pulled out and leaned down for a hard kiss. "Better?" he growled. Remus chuckled breathlessly. "Perfect," he sighed, his whole body feeling sluggish. "Fuck. I needed that." They had both been tense lately, with Severus back at Death Eater meetings, and both of them navigating Dumbledore and the Order. Remus realized, a bit belatedly, that they hadn't had any time alone together in weeks. It was no wonder he felt so wound up. Severus helped Remus into a sitting position, pulling him onto his lap, indifferent to the sticky mess between them. He began to massage Remus's shoulders, easing any aches from having his arms raised. Remus leaned into him, humming softly. "I'm not that old and fragile," he teased, though he made no move to stop Severus's ministrations. "You used to have to do a whole lot more than pin me down to hurt me." Merlin, some of the things they used to get up to. Not all the injuries Remus blamed on the full moon were actually due to the wolf. "And I used to be able to have my way with you on the floor without my knees aching," Severus replied, his tone dry. "Things change." Remus regarded him with concern, but Severus shook his head slightly. "I'm fine," he assured, leaning in for another kiss. "Good. I'd hate to break you when we've just got the house to ourselves," Remus teased, earning a deeper kiss and a playful bite to his lip. "I do not break, wolf," Severus muttered, and Remus's eyes sparkled with mischief. "That sounds like a challenge," he flirted, fully aware that he was the only person in the world Severus would even consider risking anything for. It was an intoxicating feeling. "Need I remind you we are not 18 anymore?" Severus pointed out, his fingers digging into Remus's shoulders. "If you're trying to get me going again, it's going to take considerably more time to recover." He glanced down between them. Though evidently, werewolf stamina counts for something. Remus smirked, though he wasn't looking for a second round. "Not right now," he dismissed. "I'm just thinking about the rest of the summer. We're both going to need a lot of stress relief with everything ahead of us. Maybe I should take a shopping trip next week." The weight in Remus's voice hinted at the kind of shopping he had in mind, and he felt Severus tense at the suggestion. "That wouldn't be a bad idea," Severus agreed, and triumph flared within Remus. "For now, though, I think we should run the bath," he suggested, leaning back to stretch out his back. He wasn't ready to make Severus put his clothes on just yet. A bath sounded perfect. As they stood, Remus glanced down at both of them, naked and still sticky with remnants of their recent activities, some of the mess staining the rug. He snorted, shaking his head. "And you say we're not 18 anymore?" he joked lightly, raising an eyebrow. "Merlin, thank goodness for this house. We couldn't do this at Grimmauld or Hogwarts." He chuckled, grateful for Sirius's wealth and the pretentiousness that allowed for living rooms with fireplaces where they could indulge like something out of a trashy period romance novel. Severus looked up at him, amusement dancing in his eyes. "Perhaps if we did, Albus would finally have that long-overdue heart attack," he said with mock seriousness. "Molly, too, if we timed it right." Remus laughed, imagining the reactions of their friends in the Order if they could see what had just happened in that room. Sometimes he wished he could spill their secret, just to witness the looks on their faces. One day, that moment would come, and he couldn't wait.